Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto was raised by 3rd Hokage Danzo and married Sakura Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Village hidden in the leaves, a village renowned for its ruthlessness and evil ways. A village under the rule of the 3rd Hokage, Danzo. Danzo obtained the title of Hokage when the 2nd Hokage's successor, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was killed in action before they could even make it back to the village on a mission during the First Great War. Danzo has since then been the Hokage, and has brought his village to new heights. At the same time, the village has lost many morals, only valuing winning and power. Other than that, they showed no mercy to their enemies, often killing criminals and placing bounties for wanted dead only. The sheer ruthlessness of the village has often dissuaded many of the other villages from attacking, let alone dealing with the village. The will of fire was replaced by Danzo's own wrath of fire. Instead of believing in the next generation and leaving behind a good example as the 1st and 2nd Hokage would have wanted, Danzo instead put more training and emphasis on winning and striking down your opponent in cold blood, and that the village's power rested above all else. This turned many rising shinobi into cold, heartless killers that made even the most fearsome of shinobi tremble with fear. One young student who seemed to be a model example of Danzo's new ideals was a child by the name of Orochimaru. The pale young man, along with his two teammates Jiraiya and Tsunade, were at the top of their class in every field. But something about Orochimaru told Danzo that he'd be an exemplary example of the village's beliefs. Unlike Tsunade and Jiraiya, Tsunade was too soft and weak. She was the granddaughter of the 1st Hokage, and like him shared his ideals and beliefs. There was a time when Danzo also thought that way, but after the 2nd Hokage didn't name him the 3rd Hokage, Danzo lost all respect for the two former Kages. Jiraiya was something else. He hardly practiced any of Danzo's traditions, and he seemed to possess the will of fire, almost as much as Sarutobi himself. After Danzo's various attempts to try and convert Jiraiya, the white-haired lad found a way to escape by learning from the great Toad sages. Orochimaru, however, seemed to idolize and worship everything that Danzo stood for, but not necessarily the man himself. Because of this, Danzo became Orochimaru's unofficial teacher. As the years passed, more wars emerged. The Second Shinobi War brought fame to many of Konoha's shinobi. In a battle with Hanzo, a Megacure's leader, Jiraiya, Orochimaru and Tsunade were given the name of the legendary Sannin. Not only that, but Tsunade was praised for her medical ninjutsu, managing to a variety of poisons from the shinobi of Sunagakur, but she abandoned the village after she lost her brother and her fiancé. Another shinobi rose to fame, for being almost as powerful as the Sannin themselves. Konoha's White Fang, Tsukumo Hatake, had never been one to follow the traditions that Danzo had given. The White Fang had always put his comrades above everything, including the mission. Still, the man's abilities were indeed incredible, so killing or punishing the man would be wasteful. Orochimaru was the only one of the Sannin to return to the village, informing of Tsunade's abandonment after the loss of Dan and Nawaki. Jiraiya, however, just stayed in a Megacure to train 3 brats, and would return once he finished. However, when Jiraiya returned, he would prove to be more of an annoyance than was bargained for. Jiraiya's beliefs would be passed on to his new student from Konoha, Minato Namikaze. A young boy with blonde hair and blue eyes, and the abilities of a natural prodigy. It's almost as if the boy was born to be a ninja. He absorbed Jiraiya's teachings like a sponge. Both he and Jiraiya were fiercely loyal to the village, but just like Tsukumo Hatake, their ideals were a threat to Danzo. Changing the village this late in the game would be a huge mistake. However, Danzo knew that those 3 had no intentions of overthrowing the village. Still, if the will of fire went from those 3 and progressed further into future generations, the village will surely suffer for it. Once again, fate seemed to be on Danzo's side as the last mission the White Fang went on, he chose to save his friends instead of completing the mission. The mission was a failure, and everyone, including the people that Tsukumo saved, resented him for failing the mission. He committed suicide. Not only that, but Tsunade had lost her little brother, and her lover, and left the village for good. Jiraiya was still around a Megakure, training some brats according to Orochimaru. That only lasted for a few years though, and Jiraiya came back, upset that Tsukumo and Tsunade were gone. It seems as if Jiraiya is the only fool left to oppose Danzo's ideals. Tsukumo Hatake lived on through his son Kakashi, a young man who bore a striking resemblance to his father. He worshipped the ground Tsukumo walked on, and his death caused Kakashi to live strictly by the shinobi code. Something Danzo used to quickly manipulate the young prodigy. Danzo personally molded the boy into a mini version of himself, cold, unattached, strict, and loyal to the village. Kakashi learned to bury his emotions and he became like an extension of Danzo's will. Time passed so quickly. Minato was already a grown man, taking his own team of genin, which included Kakashi, an Uchiha, and a medical ninja. Danzo made an alliance with a Megakure's leader, Hanzo the Salamander. It was part of a long-term plan that the ruthless Kage had in store. The Land of Wind's daimyo was giving more missions to Konoha, thus causing Sunagaku to run low on funds. Danzo met with the third Kage, offering to open up trade with the village. The third Kage agreed willingly. He and Danzo had many similarities. They both valued their village more than anything, both were deceiving and treacherous. That was the exact reason that Danzo sent Orochimaru, his most trusted protege, to keep an eye on the village. Minato and Jiraiya were little more than annoying flies, but they presented no immediate threat. Danzo still kept a weary eye on the duo, and then on Minato's student, Obito Uchiha. Luckily, the newly appointed Jonin of the team, Kakashi, took up on that mission. Jiraiya wandered to and from the village at his leisure, which irritated Danzo. However, the white-haired sage knew that Danzo wouldn't do anything to him, due to the fact that Jiraiya was only useful because of his abilities. One day, however, Jiraiya left and never came back for unknown reasons. The only one to challenge Danzo's ideals now was Minato. Orochimaru returned to the village one day, informing Danzo of everything that happened in the Suna. Orochimaru met and befriended a young puppet master with incredible abilities far beyond any of Suna's puppeteers before him that went by the same of Sasori. The third Kage later caught onto the treachery from Konoha. Orochimaru, with the help of Sasori, assassinated the Kage to avoid a war from breaking out. Danzo commended Orochimaru for his actions. Not only did he prevent a war, but now Danzo can put someone more loyal in the seat of power in Sunagaku. Danzo ruled his village, and practically the country, and now he has allies in a Megakure, linking to the Land of Wind, which was now without a leader. Orochimaru returned to Suna, informing the people that their Kage planned to attack their allies in order to gain more power. Normally the people of the village wouldn't believe such a thing, but the village was dying. Danzo did not trade with Suna as much as he probably should have, leaving the people weak and starving. The people were tired, and willing to do whatever it took to live without worrying about food or money. No one argued when there was a proposal for Konoha's help. Many shinobi from Konoha came a few days later with food, supplies, and almost everything else the village needed. Orochimaru oversaw the village being reformed, and worked closely with his accomplice Sasori. Of course, a few shinobi loyal to the third Kage did not agree with allowing Konoha to aid them, and a few more radical individuals actually tried attacking the snake and the puppet master. Their attacks were unsuccessful. Due to the close ties with Orochimaru and Konoha, Sasori was a prime candidate for the seat of 4th Kage. However, many were convinced he was too young. They needed to be convinced. Orochimaru and several of Danzo's shinobi disguised as Suna shinobi ran into the Land of Earth, and started burning villages, killing men and children, and doing unspeakable things to women. This would not stand, as Iwagakure soon staged an assault on the land of wind. Orochimaru informed Sasori of what he had done, and that if he fought back this army successfully that he would be Kazekage. Sasori led the forces of Suna admirably, and with the help of Orochimaru and Konoha, fought Iwagakure all the way back across their borders. The people were afraid during the invasion, but once they saw Sasori fighting and leading in battle, they practically swept him into the seat of Kazekage. Orochimaru returned to Konoha to deliver the news to Danzo. The Hokage wasn't entirely pleased that Orochimaru invaded another country without asking him first, but still was glad to have Sasori as Kazekage now. However, while his actions in the Land of Earth hadn't brought Iwagakure to Konoha's doorstep, the fact that Orochimaru helped Suna certainly did. Konoha, along with the help of Omegakure, fought against Iwagakure and slaughtered all who opposed them. On top of the lost forces from the invasion in the Land of the Wind, and now trying to attack Konoha, Iwagakure was now left beaten and broken. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and Danzo immediately set out to finish the village off. Iwa fought as best as they could, but as soon as Suna offered their aid, Onoki, the third Tsuchikage surrendered. Iwagakure was now at the mercy of Danzo and Sasori. While they could have did the same to Iwa that they did to Suna, Onoki was more valuable alive than dead. Unlike the tired people of Suna, Iwagakure would have retaliated if their leader died. Instead, the combined nations forced Onoki and his village to ally themselves with Sunagakure and Konoha in case of times of war, and they also had to make protection payments to the two countries every year. Begrudgingly, Onoki had no choice but to accept as his village was held by the throat. With the alliances with Hanzo of Omegakure, Sasori of Sunagakure, and now forcing Onoki of Iwagakure to join, Danzo now was one of the most dangerous and powerful men in the world, and his village was untouchable. That was, until the day of the nine-tailed fox attack in the Land of Fire. The colossal demon raged throughout the country for days, killing all that stood in its path. Danzo quickly mounted a counterstrike against the fox, which came at the cost of hundreds of shinobi lives. Danzo himself even lost his right arm and eye in battle. Were it not for the arrival of Kakashi and the young medical girl Rin, Danzo surely would have died that day. And were it not for Minato Namikaze, who made the ultimate sacrifice in sealing the fox demon's spirit within his own son at the cost of his life, the Land of Fire would have been destroyed. The entire attack was a huge failure, which left the village vulnerable. Danzo lost one of the most promising shinobi Konoha had ever produced, lost countless shinobi, and lost his own arm and eye in battle. There were so many things that could go wrong. Iwagakure or Sunagakure could betray him and take his seat of power. One of the other nations he hadn't touched yet could attack and start a war. Why did the fox demon have to attack? It was too convenient. It had to have been planned. But who could control something like the demon fox? The Uchiha clan. Danzo approached the Uchiha's leader, Fugaku, and demanded to know who planned the attack. Fugaku and the Uchiha clan all denied having anything to do with the fox demon attacking. Danzo was infuriated, feeling he could do nothing against the Uchiha clan. They were one of the strongest clans in Konoha, no, in the whole world. He couldn't fight them with one arm and one eye and nearly a third of the manpower he used to wield. Danzo ordered Kakashi, who was now chief of the Anbu, to capture Shisui and bring him forward for interrogation. After a brutal physical and mental torture given by Kakashi and Orochimaru, Shisui still told Danzo that the Uchiha did not use the fox demon to attack Konoha. In a rage, Danzo ordered Shisui be killed on the spot. Orochimaru told Danzo that he may be able to attach Shisui's arm to Danzo, as well as implant his eye into the Hokage as well. Danzo readily agreed. The procedure was successful, and Danzo now possessed his very own Sharingan. The Uchiha clan's extermination was back on track. Danzo, Kakashi, Orochimaru, and a few members of the Anbu moved into the Uchiha compound and killed every last person they could find. They slaughtered men and women, leaving their bodies in the streets to pour a river of crimson. The group moved to the last house, the home of the head of the clan, Fugaku. The team moved into his home, being met with the fierce gaze of Fugaku and Makoto Uchiha. Danzo showed them no mercy as he cut them both down, leaving them to lie on the floor. The next day, Danzo told the village that the Uchiha were planning to overthrow Konoha in a violent coup. The village either believed Danzo, or was too afraid to think otherwise. An entire clan was wiped out in one night by the feared and ruthless Hokage. Later that day, Kakashi came to Danzo with some grim news. Apparently 3 Uchiha survived: Obito, Itachi, and Sasuke. The good news from this was that Sasuke was still in the village, and could be manipulated by Danzo as he saw fit. He put the young, traumatized boy in his own twisted version of therapy. He conditioned the boy with genjutsu, physical punishment and many other cruel methods to force Sasuke Uchiha to become fanatical about Konoha, and to think that his clan deserved to die by trying to overthrow the village. Sasuke Uchiha would become a hardened shinobi who would serve Konoha with loyalty beyond reproach. Orochimaru came to Danzo, informing the old man of an experiment that could give Danzo even more power. It involved implanting the first Hokage's DNA into Danzo's right arm, which should give him the ability to use the secret wood-style jutsu. Before Danzo could say yes, Kakashi came in with a secret book of a jutsu forbidden even amongst the Uchiha clan. It was a genjutsu that warped reality around the user temporarily, but then the user's eyes would be closed forever and could never be reopened. Danzo quickly devised a way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He would take 10 Sharingan, and would implant them into his new arm along with the first's DNA. He would possess the power of the Uchiha, and the power of the first Hokage. The procedure was a success, and Danzo could successfully use the first Hokage's jutsu, and he even tested Izanagi. Now Danzo had the power of the Uchiha and the first Hokage, and he had one of the last living Uchiha under his belt. Not only that, but Danzo's allegiances with Hanzo, Sasori, and Onoki remained strong. With their Jinchuriki and his together, on top of Danzo's new powers and having Orochimaru, Kakashi, and Sasuke with him, Danzo didn't see what could stop him. But it wasn't enough for the greedy Kage. Danzo had learned that there was a Jinchuriki that wasn't under the rule of one of the great shinobi nations. He told Hanzo of this, telling his ally it was so that he could have the Jinchuriki for his own village. Danzo only allowed Hanzo to have his own Jinchuriki to keep the fool happy. If the Hokage took it for his own, there would surely be political backlash. As it turned out, even Hanzo having a Jinchuriki had its own backlash. The 4th Hokage started a war with Konoha, claiming that they were becoming too powerful in times of peace. The accusation was laughable since the Hokage was building his army during times of peace. Danzo hardly had a moment of peace without some type of war or opportunity arising. The battles between Konoha and Kumo were bloody and brutal. Unfortunately, Suna was working on making sure its people survived and had food on their tables, while Iwa had to rebuild from their beating from Suna and Konoha, so they were both unavailable for war. Hanzo had his hands full with searching for the Jinchuriki of Tokigakure, and having to deal with some annoying rebels that threatened his regime. Konoha had to battle Kumo fair and square in this war. However, after nearly a year of warring, the 2 nations decided to come to a treaty. The head ninja of Kumogakure showed up in Konoha to personally sign the treaty and stay in the village for a few days as a sign of their newfound peace. This peace was violently disrupted. Apparently the head ninja tried to kidnap the Hyuga heiress, Hinata Hyuga, at night and was killed by Hinata's father. Danzo was proud that Hiashi kept the secrets of his clan hidden, but Kumogakure and its Hokage were less than pleased. They were outraged at the thought that they would try to steal the Byakugan after signing the peace treaty, and demanded an eye for an eye. Hiyashi was to be killed in return for losing their head ninja. Danzo met with the Hyuga clan leaders, and devised a simple plan: kill Hiyashi's twin brother Hazashi in his stead. It was a tough call, but Hiyashi was the clan leader, and he couldn't be killed because a backstabbing nation demanded blood. Hiyashi was against the idea, but Hazashi willingly accepted and was killed the next morning. After the death of Hazashi, his son ran away from the village and was never found. Even the Hyuga elders tried using the curse mark to trace him for a time, but eventually they could not trace it anymore. They concluded that Neji must have been killed, and with the seal on him, his Byakugan was destroyed, thus no longer allowing any enemies to learn its secrets. By the end of this whole mess, things seemed to calm down and once again seemed to be heading Danzo's way. Hanzo had captured the Jinchuriki, who was a few years than Konoha's own Jinchuriki, Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze. The villages of Iwa and Suna had rebuilt their power. Each of Danzo's allies had at least one Jinchuriki, the 1 tail, 4 tails, 5 tails, 7 tails, and now the 9 tails. However, one unfortunate evening, Danzo was informed that Naruto was taken from the village. The Hokage was enraged and sent out countless search parties, but never caught even a trace of the boy. Years later, Danzo still had search parties looking for Naruto, but only a few. He practically gave up hope of finding him, but better safe than sorry. Sasuke was already a genin and was Kakashi's personal student. Orochimaru was Danzo's right hand, and he was the key link in the relationship between Konoha and Suna. Without him, Danzo wasn't so sure what the village's relationship would be like. Iwagakure surprisingly seemed to fully honor their allegiance with Danzo. Perhaps they valued power just as he did. Danzo ruled nearly the entire western half of the continent, and had no intentions of stopping there. However, he deserved a rest, as did the rest of the village. But it seemed as if fate had no intentions of letting the old Hokage rest. A group of united rogue ninja attacked a cargo delivery from Konoha to Suna. They killed the shinobi escorts and stole the cargo. Danzo normally would have paid no mind to such a situation, but after the same thing kept happening, he started to get annoyed. Later on, the same group of rogues boldly attacked a Konoha outpost on the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Rivers. One Konoha shinobi survived, informing Danzo that the shinobi were skilled at sabotage, and that they must have been planning an attack for days. Danzo got the hint. Someone was trying to overthrow him. With the number of shinobi that left the village, as well as the many enemies he's made, it could be any number of people or groups. Still, this would not stand. Danzo ordered all of his men and outposts to be on full alert for the possibility of an attack, not having the patience to have his peace challenged by a group of pests. In a country just north of the Land of Fire, deep underground within the center of the country was a massive cavern, full of people walking around, setting up what would appear to be a base of operations. Within one of the back rooms, a few dark figures gathered around a long table with the map of the continent on it. "All right," a young man with orange hair and blue eyes piped up, "shall we begin this meeting?" Everyone remained quiet, waiting for him to continue. "Well, all of Konoha's camps, bases, and outposts are now put on full alert. Obviously, Danzo realized that he's being attacked. But what about the other countries?" Another young man with long, red hair asked. "What about Sunagakure or Omegakure? They're not setting up like Konoha as Nagato. Apparently, Danzo thinks we're just after him. So, we're going to show we're out to fuck over his entire system." "How'd talks with the Prinya group go?" "Ah, not too bad," a giant man with long, spiky white hair replied with a shrug. "They didn't trust me at first obviously, but once I said our group was going up against Danzo, they couldn't have joined faster." "Good, so that means we have a little extra manpower." "Not much, Yahiko. There were a little over 40 ninja left. Not much when you compare it to the 4 armies we're up against. It's not like we're fighting them out in the open, Master Jiraiya," Yahiko snapped. We're going to break their foundation, and show the world that Danzo and his alliances can be beaten. Once that happens, more will rally to our aid. Yeah, rally just like Kumo and the Raikage, a busty blonde-haired woman muttered. All of us were labeled rogues by Danzo in case if you forgot, so no real village will join us no matter what we try and say. Lady Tsunade is right, Nagato said. We're going to have to do this on our own terms. If anyone else is going to join us, it'll be rogue shinobi and not entire countries. Well, we'll hire mercenaries and bounty hunters then, Yahiko exclaimed. What man is crazy enough to go up against Danzo's forces? Jiraiya asked, knowing the answer to his own question. Yahiko growled in defeat. Listen, we've got to be patient. We just got to the point where we can start poking down the old man's defenses. You don't win wars by rushing in head first. I know Master Jiraiya, forgive me, Yahiko replied. So what do we do now? Right now we should just worry about building our manpower a little more, then work on taking out a big target, the Toad Sage answered. If we're going to poke down Danzo's defenses, we might as well poke a big hole. Yahiko nodded in agreement. Alright, Yahiko and I will work out and try to find who else would be willing to join us. The rest of you are dismissed. The other 4 shinobi nodded then walked out of the room. Nagato walked around the underground base, watching as many other shinobi dug through solid rock to build new rooms for supplies and food. Everyone worked hard, and they would have to work even harder once things started to pick up. Nagato-san, a voice called out. The red-headed young man looked over, seeing the hyperactive, unofficial mascot of the rebels, Naruto Uzumaki. The young boy started laughing as he ran towards Nagato and then jumped on him, squeezing his arms around the redhead's body. Hey Nagato-san, what's up? Naruto, can't breathe. Whoops. Naruto released Nagato who started breathing heavily to catch his breath. So how'd the meeting go? It was, Nagato took another deep breath, finally catching wind, pointless. What did you all talk about? Nagato sighed with a friendly smile before continuing his walk through the cavern. Naruto quickly followed him, staring up at the older man. Basically we just said how we got Danzo's attention, and we need to bring a few new recruits in before we do anything else too hasty. Naruto huffed then looked ahead with his eyes narrowed. Stupid old man, when I get my hands on him I'm gonna get him good. Naruto started throwing punches into the empty air as well as moving his head back and forth as if he were boxing. Nagato cracked a smirk and looked at the energetic young child. What makes you so sure you're going to fight Danzo? You're 13 and he's been Hokage since Master Jiraiya was a kid. Bah, I don't care how much older he is than the pervy sage, I'll still knock Danzo's block off. With one of these, Naruto threw a straight punch forward, and one of those. Hey, maybe you should do a little more training before you try and take on the Hokage kiddo. Naruto lowered his fists and smiled brightly up at Nagato. Is that an offer, Nagato-san? The redhead chuckled then ruffled Naruto's blonde hair. Sure. Why not? Come on kid. Naruto cheered as he jumped for joy. He grabbed Nagato's sleeve and pulled him along through the cavern. Come on Nagato-san, you're burning daylight. How can you even tell? Nagato asked hastily. Suddenly a young man with black spiky hair and orange goggles appeared upside down right in front of Naruto. The blonde jumped back and yelped with fear before he realized who it was. The man laughed amusingly as he dropped from the ceiling, flipping over and landing on his feet. Obito-san, that's not funny. Oh come on, you so know it's funny, the Uchiha replied. Naruto crossed his arms and pouted, glaring at empty space. Oh, so it's only funny when you do it to other people. Hell yeah it is, Naruto snapped. Nagato-san and I were just going to go train. Oh, I can come if you want, Obito offered, looking up at Nagato. The redhead shrugged uncaringly. Nagato-sama, a voice called out. The 3 rogues turned their head, seeing an AIM rebel running up to them. We need your help in clearing a cave-in, there are a few people trapped underneath. Shit. Sorry Naruto. Nagato ran off, following the rogue to the accident. We'll have to do this another time. Naruto opened his mouth to call after, but Nagato was too far at this point. The blonde Jinchuriki slumped his shoulders and pouted. Obito looked at Nagato, then back to the pouting 13-year-old who sulked away. The spiky-haired Uchiha sighed, feeling somewhat guilty. The rebels kidnapped Naruto for a number of reasons. One, he was a Jinchuriki, and taking him away would give Danzo one less weapon to use. The second reason was because he was Minato Namikaze's son, and his mother Kushina Uzumaki was assassinated by Danzo's ninja for believing her to be a spy, since she wasn't even from the land of fire. They told Naruto about Minato, but Jiraiya explained that Minato believed in the village and the will of fire. The young Jinchuriki accepted it after a few weeks of brooding along with Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Obito, the three people who really knew Minato, talking to the young boy. They didn't tell Naruto about how Kushina died, for fear that his hatred would blind him, which could also release the nine-tailed fox spirit upon the world. Jiraiya decided he would tell Naruto when the time was right. Another reason they kidnapped Naruto is because the young Jinchuriki hadn't been manipulated by Danzo yet. What with cleaning up the Uchiha massacre, and the war with Kumogakure, the old man didn't have a chance to manipulate Naruto yet. The rebels didn't want to condition the boy to be a mindless drone who was bent on victory like most of the shinobi in Konoha, so they let Naruto grow up his own way. As it turned out, Naruto practically wedged himself within the inner circle of the rebels' leaders. Jiraiya hadn't officially adopted Naruto, though it seemed to be more of a grandpa-grandson relationship, but still, the two were inseparable. Jiraiya became Naruto's mentor, teaching him as much as the boy possibly could. Unfortunately, Naruto wasn't quite the academic that his father was, so it took a bit longer for Naruto to learn techniques that his father learned in no time flat. Tsunade and Naruto's relationship was more or less in contrast to his and Jiraiya's. Tsunade was more of the overprotective mother, often scolding Naruto for rash actions, and she was the only one who would punish him if he did something wrong. Ironically enough, Naruto is one of the only people to talk back and disobey Tsunade, often getting himself in more trouble with the legendary Sannin. Still, the two were very close, when they weren't yelling at one another. Naruto and Nagato were as close as brothers. Nagato, being the kind-hearted person he is, would often converse with Naruto when he first came into league with the rebels. The two had much in common, and Naruto would often want to train with Nagato due to the latter's amazing abilities due to the Rinnegan. There weren't too many jutsus Nagato could teach Naruto, but he did help teach Naruto how to think more in a battle. Granted, Naruto is still a brash knucklehead, but he's learned how to be more observant in great thanks to Nagato. Naruto and Obito were as thick as thieves due to their goofy nature, fun-loving attitude, and the many pranks they play on others. Obito was basically a child at heart, which of course allowed the child of the rebels to befriend him quickly. Tsunade would often scold both of them together when they pulled pranks on other people, telling Naruto he should be working on his jutsu for as much as he brags, and telling Obito he should be helping around the base. They never listened, of course. Konan acted as Naruto's older sister in many cases. She would sometimes cover up for Naruto's misbehaving, but Naruto would pay her back later in some way. Naruto also never hesitated to help Konan whenever she needed it. They rarely spend a lot of time together, due to Konan often volunteering to do anything to help and her being one of the rebel leaders, and they had only trained together 2 or 3 times. Still, Naruto respected Konan and Konan couldn't help but care for Naruto. Yahiko and Naruto had more of a love-hate relationship. Yahiko thought Naruto should help out more since all he does is play pranks, and rarely works around the base. Yahiko also gets annoyed by the fact that Naruto takes people away like Nagato or Jiraiya to help him train, when the latter two should be helping make new plans to fight against Danzo. Naruto gets angry, saying that Yahiko is too strict and should lay off him. The two have become so aggravated with one another that they constantly argue, and they've even fought a few times. Jiraiya laughs it off, saying that the two are more alike than they care to admit. Which was true. They both believed that the rebels could beat Danzo, and that people around the world would no longer have to live in fear. Naruto did respect Yahiko for everything he's done for the rebels, and Yahiko does admire Naruto's passion to become the best and top Danzo himself. Still, the two often bump heads more than they get along. Hey, Naruto, a voice called out. The young Uzumaki looked up, seeing Ino waving at him, standing next to Neji, Tenten, and Kiba. Oh, hey guys, Naruto called back. What are you all doing? The gang of four approached Naruto. Nothing really, Tenten replied, just roaming around. What are you up to? Well, I was supposed to train with Nagato-san, but he's got to deal with some cave-in. Naruto's face suddenly lit up as he looked to his friends. Hey, do you guys wanna train? Sure, it's been a while since I've kicked your butt, Kiba replied. Oh yeah? Naruto asked, putting himself close to Kiba with his fist raised challengingly. Yeah, sparks flew between Kiba and Naruto's glances as they growled at each other. Neji simply scoffed and turned his head away with a smile on his face. I could beat both of you easily, Neji remarked. This snapped both Kiba and Naruto's heads over to the Kaki Hyuga. Care to repeat that again? I must have had something in my ear, Naruto said slowly and menacingly. I said, Neji began, turning his attention to Naruto with his smile widening, I could beat both you and Kiba easily. Oh yeah? Naruto and Kiba exclaimed at the same time. Neji chuckled, then turned his body to face the two. Care to make it interesting? Neji asked. Kiba and Naruto looked to each other, then back at Neji. The loser has to grab one of Lady Tsunade's panties. Naruto and Kiba both screamed with disgust, taking a step away from the chuckling Neji. No way, dude. Her face is young, but I'm betting that everything that's covered is wrinkled and saggy, Kiba exclaimed. The remark got Kiba 2 blows to the back of the head from Tenten and Ino. How dare you? Tenten shouted. Lady Tsunade is an amazing shinobi and leader. How dare you disrespect her like that? Seriously, what's the matter with you? Ino added, placing her foot on Kiba's back. Haven't you been taught better? Kiba growled as he tried to get back on his feet. The point Kiba made aside, Naruto said, leaning to Neji so the girls wouldn't hear, if whoever got caught, then Grandma Tsunade would kill us. That's what makes it so juicy, Neji replied with a twisted smile. You're not a chicken, are you, Naruto? Am I a chicken? No. Am I afraid of Grandma Tsunade coming at me in a blind rage with her super-powered punches? Yes, I am. Who said you were going to lose? Neji questioned. I thought you and Kiba were going to beat me. Naruto narrowed his eyes and growled. You're on. Naruto turned around, seeing Ino and Tenten still scolding Kiba, who remained face down. Hey girls, I need Kiba to beat the crap out of Neji. Tenten and Ino removed their feet from Kiba's back, allowing him to stand up and dust himself off. Sheesh, you couldn't have gotten me out of that mess sooner. Hey, quit whining, Naruto snapped. Come on, we gotta go kick Neji's ass again. Again? Neji repeated. When have either of you two ever kicked my ass? The last time we started training, remember? Naruto exclaimed. We were about ready to finish when Nagato-san broke it up. You weren't kicking my ass. I was having an off day, but there was still no way you were going to win that fight. Like hell we weren't, you lying bastard, Kiba shouted. Hey, a loud voice shouted. The three youths jumped with fear and turned around, seeing Kiba's sister Hana approaching them. What are you three doing? Nothing, Hana-san, Neji replied, his hands stiffly by his sides. The older Inuzuka narrowed her eyes at Neji, then looked over to her brother, who was practically cowering with fear. Kiba, what have I told you about your language? Watch my tongue, otherwise you'll rub sandpaper against it. Good, Hana replied with a sharp nod. Now, don't any of you think about heading up to the surface to spar. The three boys whined in unison. Hey, I know it's not fun down here, but we can't risk you guys heading topside. If anyone saw you guys, we'd all be in serious trouble. Understand? Yes, Hana-san, the three boys replied. The Inuzuka sister sighed, and knelt down in front of the trio. I'm sorry guys, but you know the rules. I can try to find a vacant area down here for you guys to spar. No, it's fine Hana-san, Neji replied. I wouldn't want to beat up Kiba in front of his sister anyway. Kiba shot an angry glare over at Neji, who had a smug grin on his face. Hana smiled, then shook her head as she walked away to deal with other matters. I'm gonna kick your ass, Kiba shouted as he lunged at Neji. The young Hyuga laughed and dodged, then ran off as quickly as possible. Kiba growled as he gave pursuit on all fours. Naruto chased after them, laughing at the sight. Tenten and Ino simply shook their heads. Boys were impossible. Kiba, the resident hothead of the group along with Naruto, which often caused friction between the two. Still, they got along well and their constant butting heads brought them closer together. Neji was the smart one of the group, both in intelligence and coming up with witty remarks to insult the rest with. Although neither Naruto nor Kiba would admit it, Neji was the best of the younger group. Ino acted more or less as the ringleader of the whole circus of kids. She made sure that they stayed in line and keeps trouble away from some of the more intimidating adults, like Tsunade. Tenten was the peacekeeper between everyone, often trying to diffuse arguments and fights between the group, usually between Naruto, Kiba, or Ino. The gang as a whole tried to help out as much as possible, but often found that adults didn't want their help, or didn't need it. Still, the group was as close as could be, and they all shared the dream of a peaceful world. Within the village of Konoha, Danzo sat behind his desk, looking at a clipboard with many papers attached to it. The door opened and Orochimaru, wearing a black Jonin outfit, walked in. You wanted to see me? The Sannin questioned. Yes, Danzo replied. I want you to take a team go to the land of waves. Agato, from Gato Trading Industries, is paying us handsomely to stop the little speck of an island from building some type of bridge. Really? Orochimaru mused. Why send me? Because, I want you to kill him after you're finished. Orochimaru cocked a questioning eyebrow up. But after you find out where the fool hides most of his money, of course. Orochimaru sneered, then nodded. Of course. Kill one of the richest men in the world and take his money. Nobody should care about some criminal with a big business. After you're done that, start our campaign in the land of water. Assemble your team and get ready to move out. Orochimaru nodded with an evil grin, then exited the Hokage's office. Once outside, Orochimaru was met with his team of 5 students, all bowing before the snake. On Orochimaru's far left was the tallest boy with white hair and green eyes, and next to him was a boy with blue-white hair and a second head coming out of the back of his neck, followed by a young woman with red hair, a boy with 4 arms and very dark skin, and last but not least was a large man with a small orange mohawk. Orochimaru smiled, then walked past his students, who stood up and followed their master. We're heading to the land of waves, was all the twisted Sannin said before jumping forward. Without a word, his students followed after him. Naruto was walking with Neji and Kiba, the latter of the 3 finally having calmed down. The boys were bored out of their wits. The amount of activities when you're underground can be very limiting when you're 13 years old. The trio looked up and saw Shizune, Tsunade's assistant, walking out of a slit-open door with a chart in her hand. Hey Shizune-san, Kiba called out. The medical ninja looked up and smiled warmly. Hey guys. The 3 boys walked up with smiles on their faces. What's going on? Can you come outside with us so we can spar or something? Naruto asked. Oh guys, I'd love to, Shizune replied with a disappointed tone, but I've still got to fill out a requisition of the medical herbs and supplies I need if we're going to have a functioning medical corp. The 3 boys groaned and slumped their shoulders in disappointment. Tell ya what, how about if I send you guys out to get this stuff for me? The boys' spirits shot through the roof as they smiled as wide as they possibly could, with an escort of course. The boys pouted. You could get out at least, right? Shizune-san is right, Neji said with a level tone. Naruto and Kiba mumbled in agreement. Neji turned to Shizune then bowed his head. If you could do so then we would be most appreciative, Shizune-san. Alright, Shizune replied with a small laugh, I'll see what I can do. The black-haired medical ninja then turned and headed down the cavern halls. Sweet. Naruto shouted. We're going outside. Hopefully. Kiba muttered. I'm not getting my hopes up though. Naruto glared at the young Inuzuka with annoyance. What a downer. The threesome continued roaming around the underground base for a few long minutes when suddenly a figure flashed before them. Kiba shot back, yelping with fright. Naruto twitched slightly, and Neji remained calm. The figure lifted his head up, revealing himself to be Itachi Uchiha. Naruto gave a sigh of relief then stared at Itachi with an agitated face. Hey guys, Itachi greeted casually, giving a small wave to boot. Hey yourself, Kiba shouted. Itachi rolled his eyes then rose up to his full height. Shizune-senpai told me to head out to get some herbs and supplies she needed, and she wanted you guys to come along. I'm game, Neji exclaimed. Me too, Naruto added, equally as excited. The others turned to Kiba who turned away and huffed. I've got other things to do, the proud Inuzuka stated. Like what? Naruto questioned. I haven't seen Akamaru all day, so I should probably play with him. Before anyone could say anything more, Kiba walked away. Naruto and Neji looked to each other and shrugged, unsure what Kiba's problem was. Itachi sighed knowingly, gaining the attention of Naruto and Neji. So, Itachi continued, slapping his palms together, shall we be going? Hell yeah, Naruto and Neji shouted. Itachi smiled then headed to the exit with the two young teens following behind him. Yahiko sat at a desk in his private quarters, going through files and papers of different shinobi from various villages and of various ranks. So far most of them seemed too unreliable or too weak to help them in any way. Yahiko screamed in frustration, throwing a file to the side. They had a small army, but Danzo had 4 large armies. They couldn't hurt him by sabotage alone. They needed to get a sizable force to deal a devastating blow to Danzo and his allies in one fell swoop. Yahiko sighed then opened another file and started reading. His door opened quietly. The orange-haired shinobi looked up, seeing his childhood friend Konan walking in. Hey, she greeted. Yahiko nodded in acknowledgement. Need any help? I'm just going through files, Yahiko replied. There's not much you could do to help. Konan sighed quietly then nodded. Have you ever heard of the Kurosuke family? Konan shook her head. They're probably the most decent individuals I've read about from all these files. They're a gang of misfits that shake down villages for protection money. They're ruthless and strict with one another. If someone doesn't follow orders then they just bury that person alive. How horrible, Konan muttered. Do we need people like that on our team? Maybe not. But they have a large assortment of weapons, and a pretty good amount of money too. And listen to this. The founder of the gang is a former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, Raiga Kurosuke. That's beneficial. Yahiko nodded in agreement, grabbing the file off the edge of his desk and handing it to Konan. Take this to Master Jiraiya or Lady Tsunade to see what they think. Konan nodded then took the file. She headed for the door, but stopped halfway. The blue-haired Kunoichi turned her head, seeing that Yahiko was too focused on the file he was reading to notice her. Konan sighed then exited the room. Once she closed the door, Konan pulled out the file and started going over it herself. This group was little more than a gang of idiotic children. What did Yahiko think he would accomplish with recruiting this group? Konan, a voice called out. The blue-haired Kunoichi lifted her eyes from the file, seeing her red-headed partner walking towards him. Hey, I've been looking for you. Tell me what you think of this file, Konan stated immediately, thrusting the papers in Nagato's face. I think it's a file. Idiot, Konan snapped, smacking Nagato in the back of the head with the file. Nagato flinched as he was struck, but still managed to laugh at his own joke. Tell me what you think of the group in this file. Nagato took the file, maintaining a smile on his face as held the papers in front of him. His eyes moved back and forth, scanning the file carefully. Who gave you this file? Yahiko, Conan replied. He thinks that we should try and bring those guys into our faction just because they have a little extra money, some extra weapons, and because their founder was a former member of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Really not. Nagato's tone was impressed as he went over the file again. Conan scoffed, then ripped the file from Nagato's hands. Did you even read this file? It's a gang of misfits that shake down defenseless villages for money, and if there's someone in the gang that doesn't follow orders, they get buried alive. Conan, you know better than most that we need more people on our side, and we could use every cent we can get, and some extra weapons wouldn't hurt either, unless Naruto a hold of them, I suppose. Aren't you listening though? Conan snapped angrily. The reason we're all rogues is because we want to make the world a better place, make it fair and equal. If we bring this gang on our side, we'll look like a bunch of criminals who encourage the type of behavior. How far are we willing to go just to win this war? Well, with due respect, this gang is assembled of a bunch of rogues. We're all a bunch of rogues, but we're not the heartless bastards that our villages make us out to be. Who's to say that these guys can't change either? They're criminals, the scum of the earth, pathetic pieces of human life. Why would they want to help us, and why should we even want their help? Wow, those are some harsh names. Nagato rose his hands in defense. I don't even think you've called out enemies that. Conan threw her arms up with frustration, then walked away. Nobody understood the moral issue. Nagato looked back at Conan with a concerned look, then headed for Yahiko's quarters. The redhead knocked, then opened the door, seeing his orange-haired friend throwing another file to the side. Man, aren't we picky? Nagato said mockingly. Yahiko looked up, then down at the files on the floor of rejects he found unfit to help. We need people who are trustworthy or who are valuable. Even a gang of crooks? Nagato questioned. Yahiko looked up questioningly to his friend. The Rinnegan user knelt down, then lifted up a file and started reading it. Oh, now this guy could help us big time. Nagato turned the folder around, showing Yahiko the picture. Yeah, right. Yahiko scoffed. Did you see why he's a rogue? He stole a high-class jutsu from his village, Nagato replied with a careless shrug. A lot of others have stolen jutsus from their homes. Why is this guy so different? Read his current occupation, Yahiko challenged. Nagato flipped the folder back around and read it carefully. Terrorist bomber for hire. Yeah, we can trust him. Of course we can, Nagato sniped back. All we've got to do is keep paying him. Yahiko sighed and rolled his eyes. Notice where most of his bombings take place. Nagato threw the folder back on Yahiko's desk, landing it perfectly open and facing up at the orange-haired shinobi. Nagato laughed mockingly, believing his point to be proven. We still can't trust him, Yahiko replied, leaning back in his chair. He's unstable and only stole the jutsu to improve his own power. He could just betray us to do the same. Yeah, right. What do we have that's of any value? Another good point, Yahiko continued, leaning forward. If we have nothing to offer, then nobody, especially not this man, would want to join us. We've got to attack Danzo and show that we can stand up to him before we bring it people who want something. That makes sense, Nagato mumbled slowly. But what makes you think this Kurosuke family is going to join us without something in return? Yahiko sighed with aggravation, falling back into his seat heavily. His eyes looked up angrily at Nagato, who simply stared back. Conan told you to come in here, didn't she? Nagato's face fell with disbelief. What? No man. No, she just showed me the file and I thought I'd make sure you thought it out completely and. Yahiko seethed, unconvinced. Well, tell her I've made up my mind, and if it's okay with Jiraiya or Tsunade, then we're setting up a meeting with the Kurosuke family. I have no problem with that. Yahiko looked up to his friend with a smug look. Nagato studied it for a moment, then realized what he just said. What I meant to say is that I have no problem with it, because I know there's no chance Jiraiya or Tsunade will go for it. Yahiko smirked then shook his head, looking back through files. Nagato swayed awkwardly, unsure if he should leave or try to prove his point further. He decided to leave. Yahiko looked through another useless file then tossed it aside. His brown eyes drifted to the file that Nagato had thrown on his desk. Yahiko snorted then turned away, already making up his mind of that criminal. His eyes reluctantly moved back to the file. Yahiko sighed then pulled the file over and opened it, staring at the picture clipped just above his name, Deidara. Naruto and Neji followed Itachi down a dirt trail towards a nearby forest containing most, if not all, of the herbs Shizune needs. The two boys were excited and happy as could be to be outside and under the sky above. Neji, can I trust you to go to the village just outside of the forest to get some supplies? Itachi questioned. Sure thing, boss, Neji replied. If I was in a rush to get back. Itachi chuckled a bit, looking back over his shoulder. Naruto looked at Neji then understood what he meant. The young Jinchuriki snapped his head over at Itachi, giving him a stern look. Alright, we'll take our time getting back. Neji and Naruto laughed then slapped hands with one another. Hey Itachi, Naruto said as he turned his head to the older shinobi, do you know why Kiba was all angry and didn't want to come? Itachi rolled his eyes then shrugged. Despite his lie, Neji and Naruto seemed to buy it. Itachi pulled out the list and started going over it again. Naruto and Neji hurried and stood up on their tiptoes to try and read the list as well, unbeknownst to Itachi. The young Uchiha shifted his eyes to the side, catching Naruto and Neji reading over his shoulder. Not only was Itachi confused as to why they were being so nosy, he was even more confounded by the fact that they were looking over his shoulder. Itachi snapped his head, but Naruto and Neji were a split second faster. The black-haired shinobi narrowed his eyes while Naruto and Neji walked a few paces behind him, acting casually. Itachi gave a questioning look to the duo before turning back around. Naruto and Neji both grinned widely and turned to each other. Tsunade sat behind her desk, reading the file that Konan gave her about the Kurosuke family. Konan knew that if anyone, besides herself, would be opposed to working with such ruthless outlaws it'd be Tsunade. The busty blonde finally dropped the file and looked up at Konan with her honey-colored eyes. I think we could use them, Tsunade replied. Konan's face dropped with horror and outrage. Tsunade casually put the file back on her desk and looked up at Konan, waiting for the protest that was sure to come. You're kidding, right? Konan shouted. They're a gang of ruthless criminals. To some we could be seen as ruthless, Tsunade retorted. They know what they're doing is wrong. We're trying to bring peace to the world. Tsunade sighed then leaned back into her chair. Look, I'm honestly no fan of this gang or their morals either, but they do have a reputation of getting things done. And their leader is one of the former 7 swordsmen of the Mist. At the very least we could try and negotiate with them if nothing else. Konan sighed and looked away with a sharp glare. Very well, Lady Tsunade. The blue-haired Kunoichi turned and walked out of the room. Tsunade sighed heavily before going through another file. Itachi and Naruto were in the forest, picking through various herbs and plants. Itachi knew exactly what to get, but Naruto had a little more difficulty differentiating between medical herbs and weeds. Neji was keeping lookout with his Byakugan active in case if any wandering shinobi happened to stroll through the area. What about this one? Naruto asked. Itachi turned his head then rolled his eyes. Are you doing this on purpose now? Naruto, that's a bush. Literally, you just pulled a bush out of the ground. Naruto looked at the giant clump of green in his hand then back at Itachi with an embarrassed smile. Itachi sighed and rolled his eyes before moving back to gathering herbs. Are we almost done? Naruto asked. This is boring. You're the one who wanted to get outside so badly, Itachi sniped. Yeah, but picking plants got boring really fast. Itachi chuckled and shook his head. Guys, Neji called. We got a caravan of Konoha shinobi coming in our general direction. Alright, Naruto shouted, slamming his fist into his open hand. In a flash, Itachi grabbed Neji, then grabbed Naruto and ran for a better place to hide. Hey, what are you doing? Let's go kick their asses. Yeah right, a runaway Hyuga, Konoha's Jinchuriki, and an Uchiha survivor would surely bring attention to ourselves. Itachi's right, Neji added, if even one shinobi got away then he'd report the sighting to Danzo, and then we'd all be in trouble. That's why we kick all their asses so that they can't get away. Itachi and Neji both scoffed and rolled their eyes. Itachi jumped down in a nearby, thick bush a few meters away from their previous location. They watched the trail as a group of Chunin and Jonin, dressed with dark gray vests and black shirts under them, escorted a few wagons of weapons and supplies. Itachi watched the shinobi pass by, not daring to move a muscle. One shinobi in particular caught the young Uchiha's attention. A man with silver hair, wearing a mask to cover his face, and eyes as hard and cold as steel, Kakashi Hatake. Itachi's eyes focused in on him, knowing that they'd be in for one hell of a fight if Kakashi found them. The Jonin suddenly stopped and held his fist up, ordering the rest of the group to stop as well. Everyone remained where they stood, watching Kakashi who was scanning his surroundings. Two younger shinobi suddenly appeared next to Kakashi, bowing their heads to him. Itachi figured they must have been his students at least. Kakashi-sensei, a young woman with short, dark hair addressed respectfully. I want this area scanned, the Jonin stated. The young girl nodded then clasped her hands together. This isn't good, Itachi thought. He hastily casted a quick but very powerful genjutsu around himself, Naruto and Neji to shield them from detection. What's the holdup? An annoyed voice asked. Kakashi looked up, just as a woman jumped on the roof of a wagon. The woman wore a black trench coat over a full chainmail bodysuit, and a dark orange skirt. She had violet hair that was put up into a spiky bun. Nothing, Kakashi lied. Well, your favorite student over here is already getting impatient. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at Anko, then turned back to his student. The young girl looked around, her vision seeing everything around her. I don't see anything, Kakashi-sensei. The masked Jonin looked to his other student. Shino, I want you to make sure that Hinata didn't miss anything. The young man nodded then held his arms out. Itachi looked at the style of clothing the other young student wore and determined that he was from the Aburame clan. Millions of tiny black dots flew out of the boy's sleeves and stayed still in the air. Itachi slowly reached to his back pouch and pulled out 3 masks. They were required for everyone in case they needed to shield their identity. He handed one to Naruto and another to Neji. When I give the word, we run, Itachi said. Neji nodded, his face showing hardened resolve, but deep down he was a bit nervous. Naruto's anxiety was more obvious as he nodded once. The tiny black dots slowly started to move in their direction. The 3 rogues quickly put on their masks and placed their hands firmly on the ground. There, Shino exclaimed, snapping his head towards Itachi, Neji, and Naruto's direction. Move, Itachi shouted. The 3 of them shot out of the bushes in a flash. Track them, Kakashi ordered his students. Hinata and Shino, as well as a third figure from the other side of the wagon, jumped forward in pursuit. Go back them up, Anko shouted, turning her head to the side she came from. 3 more figures ran out from the sides and went into the forest. Shouldn't you go help them or something? Anko inquired, turning to Kakashi. They can handle themselves, Kakashi replied with a cold, uncaring tone. Should we split up? Neji asked, running next to Itachi. No, we don't know how many they sent after us. Itachi was digging around in his back pouch before finally pulling out a pair of goggles with tinted lenses. This should disguise your Byakugan from them. Neji nodded then took the goggles and put them around his head. Itachi reached into his kunai holster and pulled out a pair of slim, shining sunglasses and slapped them over his eyes. Neji and Naruto gave a disbelieving look to one another before turning back to Itachi. The man had a weird taste for sunglasses for some reason. Itachi snapped his head, pulling out a kunai. He spun around and deflected a shuriken that was aimed right at him. Neji turned his head, but before he could even lay eyes on his comrade, he saw a fireball coming at him. The Hyuga rogue planted his feet in the ground, then sprung himself into Itachi, knocking them both out of harm's way. The fireball exploded once it hit the ground, throwing Itachi and Neji into Naruto. 6 figures landed around the trio, 2 were in tree branches above, 2 more used other trees as shields, while the last 2 stood on opposite sides, out in the open. Neji and Itachi quickly got up and looked at their formation. What was supposed to happen is that they were supposed to attack the ones in the open. Once that happened, the ones in the tree branches would spring a trap, or throw something to cause the enemy to dodge. Once that happened, the shinobi behind the tree would move in and finish the opponent off. "You all are going down," Naruto shouted as he sprung to his feet. Itachi quickly reached out and grabbed the back of the energetic Uzumaki's collar, holding him in place while Naruto screamed and shouted with protest. One of the shinobi on the tree branches got a bit impatient, then hurled 3 shuriken at the opponents. Neji and Itachi, still having a hold on Naruto, jumped straight up into the air as not to give their opponents an opening. One shinobi, with a strange device on his arm, sprung forward, going straight for Itachi. Neji looked over, seeing the enemy heading towards Itachi. He spun around with as much force as possible and then struck the Konoha shinobi in the stomach. The genin cried out with pain before he hit the ground hard. The 3 rogues landed on the ground, standing back to back against their opponents. Naruto growled angrily, then forced Itachi's grip off before turning to the shinobi in front of him. Naruto's eyes widened with shock at the face of his enemy. He looked exactly like Itachi, albeit Itachi was a bit older and had longer, duller hair. Naruto tugged on Itachi's shirt, unable to form the proper words. Itachi turned around then grimaced quietly. He knew what Sasuke's fate was, but there was nothing Itachi or anybody else could do about it, especially now. More Konoha shinobi could be on their way and they didn't have time for a long, emotional speech. Itachi turned forward, staring at Shino, the shinobi that tried to attack him a moment ago, with bandages wrapped all around his face so that only one eye was visible, and another shinobi with spiky black hair that was similar to Kakashi's. Neji meanwhile was standing across from Hinata Hyuga, the heiress to the Hyuga household. Itachi's eyes scanned the area, trying to find the 6th shinobi. "What are you waiting on?" Sasuke asked with a forceful, angry voice. "Attack." The 3 shinobi facing off against Itachi ran forward. The older shinobi jumped to the side, distancing himself from everyone. The 3 shinobi followed after him, just as Itachi hoped. Neji stood still, watching Hinata carefully as she ran at him. The Hyuga heiress thrusted an open palm forward, which Neji batted aside like a fly before thrusting his own palm at her. Naruto looked back to see how his comrades were holding up. "Don't take your eyes off me," an angry voice shouted. Naruto quickly turned around, then blocked Sasuke's strike with his forearm. The young Uchiha scowled, then swept his leg against Naruto's, knocking the latter towards the ground. Sasuke then threw his fist down as Naruto hit the ground. The blonde grabbed Sasuke's fist with one hand and his elbow with the other. Naruto threw Sasuke over onto his back, rolling on top of him with one hand at his throat. Sasuke grabbed Naruto's wrist, trying to pry his hand away, but found his opponent's grip surprisingly strong. Naruto threw a punch across Sasuke's face, then another, and kept smashing his fist against his adversary's face. Sasuke moved his head to the side, avoiding Naruto's next punch. The Jinchuriki's fist hit the ground, causing Naruto to wince with pain. Sasuke threw his legs up, throwing Naruto over his head. Sasuke jumped to his feet then kicked Naruto in the side of the head with all his might. Naruto cried out and rolled over, clutching the side of his head. Sasuke walked up and kicked Naruto in the ribs next. Once again, the Jinchuriki rolled over onto his back. Sasuke bent over then threw a couple of punches. Sasuke then walked around Naruto like a predator. His opponent was on the ground, holding his sides and whining with pain. Sasuke smirked then lifted his foot up, ready to stomp his opponent into the ground. His foot moved quickly, but when it was about an inch from the masked rogue, Naruto's hands quickly caught Sasuke's foot, and held on tightly. Naruto's eyes sparkled as he chuckled with amusement, "Had you fooled didn't I?" Sasuke screamed as Naruto stood up, throwing the young Uchiha off the ground and spinning backwards. Sasuke landed with a heavy thud on his chest, but quickly sprung himself up as Naruto's foot was about to smash him into the dirt. Naruto shifted his weight into the foot he used to try and attack Sasuke, spun around on his heel, and threw a mighty punch at the young Uchiha. Sasuke raised his hand up, using his arm to reinforce himself as he caught Naruto's punch. Sasuke's feet skidded back against the dirt, but he held his own. The young Uchiha threw Naruto's arm to the side then threw a powerful straight that connected with Naruto's face. The blonde Jinchuriki flew back, flipping backwards before he landed on the ground. Naruto stared back at an enraged Sasuke, waiting for him to make the next move. Neji was sliding back as he swatted all of Hinata's strikes away. He managed to hold his anger in, but he couldn't go on the offensive against her without revealing his Hyuga lineage. Neji had been trained in various other taijutsu styles, but none of them would be very effective against the Hyuga fighting style. All Neji could do was go on the defensive and wait for an opening. Unfortunately, with Hinata's skills, there wasn't any room for an opening. Itachi was on the defensive against his opponents to better understand their fighting styles and abilities. So far though, none of them seemed to be revealing much. The shinobi with bandages all around his face charged forward, pulling his right arm back. Itachi's eyes focused in on the device around his arm. The older shinobi leapt straight up in the air, throwing a kunai with a paper bomb directly below him. The Konoha shinobi jumped away as Itachi landed in a tree branch, taking a moment to look for the sixth shinobi. Whoever it is must be for support. They watch for which teammate could use the most help. Whoever it is obviously isn't the strongest of this group. If they could finish off Naruto or Neji by helping either Sasuke or the girl, then they could move on to me. Itachi's thoughts were cut short by a pair of shuriken coming for his face. He moved his head back, falling off the tree branch. Itachi managed to grab the branch, spin forward and land back on the branch. He wasn't about to give up the high grounds against a group of unpredictable young punks. Sheesh. I figured a member of the Uchiha clan would have been more of a challenge, Naruto muttered. Sasuke's eyes widened with outrage and anger. The blonde smirked, knowing he struck a chord. If you're all that's left, then that means rebuilding your clan falls on your shoulders. Honestly, I think your clan is screwed if they're relying on you. You dare insult my clan. Naruto chuckled as innocently as possible. I'll kill you. Sasuke charged towards the blonde, eyes flaring with rage. Yeah, you've done a splendid job of that so far, Naruto stated quickly before he jumped straight up in the air as Sasuke threw a punch. The Jinchuriki screamed as he kicked Sasuke across the face, sending him spinning to the ground. Oh man, Naruto said as he landed, that hurt didn't it? Sasuke turned around and got up, ready to continue. There was a rustling in the bush, causing Naruto to spin around as a pair of snakes shot out. The Jinchuriki yelped with surprise as he grabbed the serpents just below their heads. Naruto sighed with relief, but suddenly he saw another figure coming out of the bushes. The blonde quickly let go of the snakes then moved to the side, getting a better look at his opponent. All he could see was a flowing head of long pink hair attached to a slender body. Naruto landed and skidded to a stop as his new opponent turned to him. It was a young woman with long, silky pink hair, fiercely determined eyes. She wore a red dress, with tight black shorts, and wore her forehead protector around the top of her head. Naruto's eyes were as wide as could be. She's so beautiful. Are you alright, Sasuke-kun? The girl asked, turning to said Uchiha. I'm fine, the black-haired shinobi snapped. What are you doing here? Isn't there someone else who could use your help, Sakura? The girl named Sakura looked away with a faint blush. Sasuke turned his head to her, waiting for her response. Well, that's her way of saying you suck, Naruto shouted, angry that Sasuke was picking on Sakura. The young Uchiha snapped his head around, growling angrily. What? It's true, isn't it? You ignorant little punk, Sasuke seethed. You think you're so tough, don't you? Yeah, that's why I say you suck. Sasuke smirked and scoffed dismissively. You have no idea what I'm really capable of. I just didn't feel like wasting my talents on a loser like you. Naruto's eyes hardened a bit. Sasuke got ready to attack, but the older rogue showed up between the two of them. We're leaving, Itachi told Naruto. I can sense that reinforcements are coming. Fine, Naruto muttered. Even he knew better than argue. No one is going anywhere, Sasuke shouted. I'll finish you all off here, and Itachi snapped his head over to Sasuke. The younger Uchiha's eyes fluttered as he fell down as limp as a noodle. What the? Sasuke-kun. What did you do? Itachi lifted his hand up, slowly extending his finger. Hey, there's no reason for that, is there? Naruto whispered to Itachi. The older shinobi sighed to himself, then moved his hand over and pointed to his former opponents. They too were in Sasuke's condition. Sakura growled briefly before looking over to the rogues who were now gone. Kakashi and Anko appeared behind Sakura, looking around and seeing all of their students lying on the ground and all unconscious. Sakura turned her head, then quickly snapped her body around and bowed to the Jonin. I'm sorry, but they got away, sensei, Sakura apologized. Some student you have, Kakashi sniped mockingly at Anko. Hey, she's the only one who's conscious, Anko retorted. Kakashi walked over to Sasuke and looked down at him. They're under a genjutsu. Even I could tell that without having to study him. Did you get a good look at the enemy? Kakashi asked. No, really, Sakura replied. They were wearing masks and two of them were wearing goggles or glasses to cover their eyes. Kakashi turned to Anko with a knowing look. Oh, sure, just automatically assume it's Itachi or Obito. You know Lord Danzo is going to want solid proof. Kakashi growled angrily, then looked back to the unconscious Genin. Just let it go, big guy. Those three are long gone by now, and we've got to make this shipment, otherwise Danzo is going to get really angry. Kakashi nodded, then looked to Sakura. Break them out of this genjutsu and regroup. Sakura nodded as Kakashi vanished in a blur. Anko gave one last look to her student, then followed after Kakashi. Sakura walked up to her teammates, Dosu and Zaku, first and broke them out of the genjutsu. They were obviously less than pleased with themselves having failed to apprehend or stall the enemy any further. The team then released the genjutsu from Hinata, Shino, and Sasuke and headed back to the caravan. Itachi was pulling his shirt off over his head, then lifted his leg up to remove his shoe. So explain why we're taking a detour to the river, Neji asked. One of the genin we encountered was of the Aburame clan. They have tiny bugs that do their bidding. One of them might have gotten on us and then they'd be able to track us. If you guys want to go home, I suggest jumping in the river and drowning the little bastard. Alright, fine, Neji muttered, throwing his goggles in the river next to him. The river had a slow stream, so he didn't have to worry about losing them in the current. So how long do we have to stay in the river? About 5 minutes, Itachi replied. The two clansmen looked up, seeing Naruto looking off into the distance as he sat perches on a tree branch. Naruto, get down here. The blonde shook his thoughts out of his head, then turned around. Alright. The Jinchuriki jumped down and removed his shirt and mask. What are we doing? Itachi and Neji both raised their eyebrows questioningly. If you don't know what we're doing, then why'd you take your shirt off? Neji questioned. You both have your shirts off, Naruto replied, and I heard the part about the river, I just don't know why we're doing any of this. Safety precautions, Itachi answered. Just hurry and get in the river. The trio jumped in quickly, making a huge splash. Naruto's head broke through the stream first, taking a deep breath of air. The blonde looked up into the sky. The image of Sakura was still burned freshly into his mind, and he couldn't get it out of his head. Neji's head slowly came up through the water, his Byakugan active in case if the enemy came in pursuit. Itachi's whole body came up next, as the older rogue floated on his back, looking up to the orange and purple sky as the sun was setting. Itachi looked over at Naruto, seeing that the boy was deep in thought. Something wrong, Naruto? The blonde's head shook again, being snapped out of his trance. Huh, is something wrong? Itachi repeated. No, nothing's wrong. Why would you ask that? You look like you're thinking, Itachi replied, cracking a slight smirk. Neji's head then whipped around to Naruto. Are you okay, Naruto? You didn't hit your head or anything, did you? Oh hardy har har, you guys are so funny, Naruto hissed sarcastically. Nothing's wrong, okay, so stop asking. If you're sure, Neji murmured. The trio soaked in the river for a few minutes before finally getting out. They walked along the nearest dirt trail with water dripping from every part of their bodies as they headed back to the base. Itachi, Naruto, and Neji walked back into their underground home, being greeted by Shizune. The fact that the three of them were shirtless and dripping wet caused some eyebrows to be raised. Itachi, why are you guys? We had a bit of a run-in with Konoha forces, Itachi answered. Shizune's eyes widened, showing shock and worry. Don't worry, we only fought off Genin-level students and got away clean. But one of them was from the Aburame clan, so we took a quick dip. Very well, Shizune stuttered with confusion. Well, did you at least get the herbs I asked for? We got a few of them, Shizune-san, Neji replied, holding out a backpack to her. Itachi ditched the bag before we fought with Konoha, so there's no way that Aburame kid could have planted a bug on these. Alright, Shizune replied, taking the bag. But I'm still going to have to comb through them carefully just in case. Until then, why don't you three put some dry clothes on? Shouldn't we report Konoha's activities? Itachi questioned. We don't know why they're here and they could. We know why they're here, Obito's voice interjected. Everyone looked over, seeing the spiky-haired Uchiha walking towards them. They're delivering shipments to a gang in this country. Our inside sources tell us it's the Kurosuke family. Why are they delivering goods to a gang like that? Itachi asked. We think it's because they're trading with the Kurosuke family. The profits that the gang gets, a portion of it goes to Konoha. Relatively small funds compared to what Konoha usually rakes in, but I suppose they want whatever money they can get their greedy hands on. So Konoha gives supplies to the Kurosuke family, and the Kurosuke family shakes down smaller villages for money, gives a portion of the profits to Konoha. Konoha gets some extra money, and they can keep the smaller villages in check without being directly involved. Obito gave a blank look at Itachi before looking up to ponder the idea. That makes sense actually, Itachi smirked with pride. Well, I've got some reporting to do. See ya guys. Obito turned and ran back into the hideout. Alright, I've got some work to do, Shizune stated. You three get some dry clothes and stay out of trouble. Yes ma'am, Neji and Naruto replied with a mocking salute. Shizune smiled and rolled her eyes before walking off. Come on guys, Itachi said, walking to the barracks with Naruto and Neji following him. Kakashi's eyes were hardened with anger. There was a group of rogues spying on them and Anko's idiotic attitude allowed them to escape. His team was the best tracking team in all of Konoha. They were better than most Anbu squads. Kakashi was naturally a skilled tracker, and his ninja hounds also added to his skill. If a single bug of Shino's was planted on an enemy, he could track them in a matter of minutes. Hinata's Byakugan could search several meters of land in a full 360-degree radius, and even see through solid objects. Even without the Sharingan, Sasuke's eyes were almost inhumanly sharp. He could notice an unnatural rustling in the leaves a mile away. Still, Kakashi's orders came directly from Danzo himself. A shipment of weapons, explosive tags, summoning scrolls, of weapons only of course, was being delivered to the Kurosuke family. Kakashi never understood why Danzo wanted to work with these petty criminals. Perhaps it was because he wanted a member of the legendary swordsman under his belt. Lord Danzo had been planning a campaign to establish connections to the Land of Water for some time now. A rogue member of the Seven Swordsmen could be beneficial if he wanted to establish an alliance. Of course, using him as a way to exploit all of the village's weaknesses would work if Danzo was planning an invasion. The convoy came to the campsite of the Kurosuke family. There were many tents set up, small fires burning to cook their food, and a few people sitting in tents of caves. A group of 5 approached the convoy. "Is this everything?" the apparent leader asked. "It sure is," Anko replied with her upbeat tone of voice. "Payment, now." The man narrowed his eyes, then nodded to the 2 men standing at the rear of the group. They walked up with 1 suitcase each and threw it in front of Kakashi and Anko. The 2 Jonin knelt down and opened the cases, both showing a certain irritation. "This is significantly less than usual," Kakashi stated with a harsh tone. "Well, we've run just about every village dry of money," the Kurosuke-gun shouted. "We can't keep paying the amount Danzo demands." "Fine then," Anko replied casually. "We'll cut your shipment by half." "You can't do that," the Kurosuke-gun angrily shouted. The entire gang in the camp stood up, their bodies tensing up, ready for a fight. "Enough," a loud and demanding voice boomed. The gang froze in their tracks and watched as a tall figure with an apparent hunchback approached. The man had a hood over his head, and his collar hid his face. "Tell Danzo that we're sorry about the payments. We'll settle for half of the shipment." "But Raiga, sir," the goon was cut off by Raiga's enraged glare. The loud-mouthed goon took a hesitant step back. Raiga turned his head back to Kakashi. "Next time we'll have your usual payment. I'm sure Danzo is a reasonable man." "You'd be surprised," Anko muttered, lifting the suitcase off the ground and signaling for the back carriage driver to turn around. "We'll be back again." Raiga nodded in acknowledgement as the Konoha shinobi turned and went away. The rogue swordsman turned around quickly, glaring at the goon who dared to threaten his alliance with Konoha. The man stepped back, trembling with fear before he tripped and fell on his rear. "Give him a proper funeral," Raiga shouted. The other 4 that accompanied the goon grabbed him and lifted him off the ground. No, wait. Please, Raiga sir, I'm sorry. I won't do it again." "Right, because you'll be buried." The 4 goons dropped their fellow gang member in a coffin and held him down while they put the top over him. More goons showed up and held the lid shut while 2 others started nailing the coffin shut. The man thrashed around, trying to break free, but to no avail. Raiga turned around and walked off with an amused smile on his mouth. Anko opened the briefcase while looking at the relatively small amount of money inside. "Boy, Danzo's gonna be pissed." Anko's students, Sakura, Dosu, and Zaku, walked behind their sensei. "Here, hold this." Anko tossed the case over her shoulder carelessly. Zaku quickly grabbed it before it could hit the ground and held it at his side. "You think she's mad about our failure?" Sakura asked, leaning towards Dosu. Zaku also leaned in, curious as to what the answer would be. "That's one of the perks of having Anko as a sensei," Dosu replied. "She's much more forgiving than most other Jonin. We may be pushed in our next training session, but it'll be nothing compared to what Sasuke's team will have to go through." Sakura looked over, seeing Sasuke walked in front of his teammates, but behind Kakashi. She had a concerned look on her face, worried what her secret crush might be put through. Dosu and Zaku peered over, noticing Sakura's worried expression. Good lord, you know you shouldn't pretend to care about him, Zaku stated. What do you mean? Sakura hissed angrily, but still keeping her voice down. I love Sasuke-kun. A blush formed across the kunoichi's face. Yeah, and I'm the next Hokage, Dosu replied with a smirk in his tone. Zaku chuckled while his teammate elbowed him for acknowledgement. You both are jerks, Sakura snapped. Just because one of you looks like a mummy and the other one is just a jerk to anything that breathes doesn't mean I don't have a shot at happiness. Yeah, you're going to find happiness from an arrogant asshole, Zaku murmured. That's the dream you're living, Sakura. Dosu snickered while Sakura simply huffed and turned her head away in anger. We're approaching the area where those rogues were, Kakashi announced. Anko turned her head, staring at the masked ninja whose eyes were glaring back expectantly. So what? The female Jonin finally asked. I suggest we send a group ahead to scout it out. Right, sure, because that's just pointless. Just send one of your students ahead and I'll send two of mine. Anko rolled her eyes then looked back at Dosu. The hunched-over genin nodded then ran ahead of the group. On the other side of the carriage, Shino and Hinata caught up with Dosu. Zaku put his free hand behind his head and looked back over at Sakura. The pink-haired kunoichi was once again staring at Sasuke with those big goo-goo eyes. Zaku simply sighed and rolled his eyes. A girl can dream, Sakura muttered, mostly to herself. That's all it's going to be, as a dream. Or in his case you might get lucky and he could just use you to harbor his babies to rebuild his clan. You could be shooting out babies every 9 months and the Uchiha clan will be revived in no time. You're seriously a jerk, Sakura snapped. I'm just calling it like I see it, Zaku replied with a casual shrug. Sakura huffed angrily as she looked away from Sasuke and Zaku. Orochimaru walked through the forest with his 5 students following in behind him. The large team of shinobi approached a small shack up in a tree where Gato was rumored to be. The Sannin wasted no time and jumped up to the front door and knocked. 2 of his students, Kimimaro and Kitamaru, stood next to their master. Orochimaru knocked twice and waited. Who the hell is it? A man with spiky hair and a sword at his hip opened the door angrily. The man turned even paler than the grinning figure before his eyes. Boss. The thug turned tail and ran back inside. Orochimaru invited himself in with his 2 students following behind him. The inside of the shack was about as good as one could expect and wasn't all that impressive. At the back of the room, a short man wearing a black suit sat in a chair, a cane next to him as well as 2 bodyguards. The man, like his servant, was very surprised. Oh, Orochimaru, at your service, the sinister Sannin replied with a cordial bow. I didn't think Danzo would send you. This is better than I thought. Yes, I bet it is. The pale Sannin stood straight up, staring at Gato. Danzo said I was to be given payment up front, and then twice that much once I complete my job. Right. Gato motioned to one of his goons. The man walked over and pulled a painting off the wall, revealing a safe inside. Orochimaru raised a questioning eyebrow. How cliché. The goon opened the safe and pulled out 4 suitcases and tossed them over to the Konoha Sannin. His students knelt down and opened each case, which was overflowing with case. Orochimaru sneered as he saw the money, then he looked up at Gato. So what's our mission again? Obito's look showed worry. He had just told Yahiko that their Konoha spies informed them of the village's dealings with the Kurosuke family. For some reason the orange-haired man seemed rather displeased. You're 100% that. Sources confirm that Konoha is dealing with the Kurosuke family, Obito repeated. That was about the 6th time since he walked into Yahiko's office. I'm never going to hear the end of this, Yahiko muttered. Go inform Lady Tsunade and Jiraiya-sensei of this information. Yes, Yahiko-san, Obito replied. The spiky-haired Uchiha turned and opened the door to leave when suddenly there was a quick whoosh that nearly knocked him off balance. One glance down and Obito saw Naruto running like there was no tomorrow. Just then, Kiba and Neji came trailing behind with obvious anger on their faces. Obito sighed and shrugged, deciding it would be best to just inform Tsunade and Jiraiya of the news. "You're a dead man, Naruto," Kiba shouted, his pupils becoming slit while his features became more feral. Neji's Byakugan was active as well, which didn't do much beside let him see everything around him. Naruto laughed fitfully as he continued to flee for his life. Less than an hour he's been back home and he already had his two best friends threatening to tear him limb from limb. As Naruto rounded a corner, he was met with a whirlwind of papers that clung around him, covering his mouth and eyes. Naruto saw nothing but darkness for a few moments before the paper was removed from his eyes. Conan was staring expectantly at the blonde Uzumaki, who chuckled nervously, knowing he was going to get scolded. "Where have you been?" "I was out with Itachi and Neji," Naruto answered truthfully. Conan's eyes narrowed, trying to intimidate Naruto for the truth. The blonde chuckled even more nervously and began to sweat a bit under the collar. Conan was one of the only people that Naruto truly feared. The big sister role meant that Conan wouldn't pull her punches on Naruto, literally in some cases. The blue-haired Kunoichi unwrapped Naruto and led him safely down on the ground. "Don't cause any more problems than we already have, Naruto." "Yes, ma'am," Naruto answered. Kiba and Neji suddenly flew around the corner, ready to attack Naruto. The blonde squealed with fright and prepared himself for the worst. Conan snapped her eyes over to the two boys, encasing the boys entirely with paper. "Hey, let us out," Kiba's muffled voice shouted. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, seeing Neji and Kiba both were trapped. The blonde turned and booked it, laughing as he went. Conan sighed and released the two brown-haired boys. The two landed on the ground, looking up at the angered Conan. "You two, behave, got it?" "Yes, ma'am," Neji and Kiba replied quickly. While Kiba and Neji didn't have as close of a relationship as she and Naruto did, they knew well enough to fear Conan. The blue-haired Kunoichi began to walk away before Obito ran up behind her, panting heavily. Finally, the spiky-haired shinobi sighed out. "Have you seen Jiraiya or Lady Tsunade?" "No," Conan replied, turning to face Obito. "Why?" "Well, Yahiko-san wanted to let them know about the Kurosuke family and Konoha dealing together." Conan's eyes twitched with a jolt of surprise. Our sources couldn't really confirm it until Itachi, Naruto, and Neji encountered a group of Konoha shinobi moving through the country. "Oh, Yahiko is never going to hear the end of this." Conan turned around again and stormed off towards Yahiko's office. "You seriously couldn't find Jiraiya?" Kiba questioned. "Or Lady Tsunade," Neji added. "No, I found M," Obito replied, "but this is more fun to watch." The spiky-haired Uchiha giggled at his own plan as he tiptoed after Conan. The wind blew harshly, filling the streets and the village with sand. Sasori didn't care. He was safely in his office, going over documents from Konoha. Sandstorms were often common this time of year anyway. Someone knocked on his door twice. He entered. His assistant, a young man with round glasses and sliver hair pulled back into a ponytail, entered with an armful of more documents. "Lord Sasori," he greeted with a respectful bow. "What is it, Kabuto? I'm very busy." "Just a routine checkup since your modification." Sasori shifted his eyes up with annoyance. "Everything is working just fine, Kabuto. It's been nearly a month since my modification, and nothing has gone even remotely wrong." Kabuto nodded with a smile. "I assume you wouldn't waste my time with something so trivial, would you, Kabuto?" The silver-haired assistant swallowed the nervous lump in his throat, then started flipping through files in his hands. The red-headed Kage's face remained unchanged. Kabuto hastily took the folder, then pulled out another and handed it to the Kage. "This is from Hanzo of Omegakure." Sasori sighed as he took the folder, opened, and began reading. "A reminder of the Chunin exams, Sasori moved his eyes up to Kabuto, forming a sly smile across his face. Gaara just became a genin, didn't he? Yes, sir. I take it you want him to participate. Indeed, Sasori replied. Do we have any other worthy genin that could participate? I'll start going over some files immediately, my lord. Make sure that Gaara gets entered first, then you can worry about the others. Yes, sir. But Lord Sasori, in order for Gaara to qualify, he must be placed in a team with a Jonin as a sensei. Then place him with his siblings and put one of our most loyal Jonin as his sensei. Kabuto nodded and bowed before moving to exit the room. Tsunade and Jiraiya sat in the meeting room, having an alarming amount of papers out on the table between them. Nagato walked in the room with Itachi following behind him. So what's this all about? Nagato asked. We've got some things we want to go over, Tsunade replied. Where are Yahiko and Konan? Obito told Konan about Konoha dealing with the Kurosuke family, Itachi answered. Tsunade sighed with aggravation while Jiraiya simply chuckled. He always appreciated a good joke, but Tsunade hated pointless fights. That's one of the things we need to talk about, Jiraiya said, handing a paper over to Nagato. The redhead took the sheet and looked it over quickly. This is about the upcoming Chunin exams, Nagato stated. Oh, wrong paper, Jiraiya replied, laughing at his own mistake. Nagato continued looking over the paper, reading the last half of it. You want to enter contestants into the Chunin exams? Itachi raised a questioning eyebrow before looking over to the two Sannin. Her idea, Jiraiya blurted out immediately as he pointed a finger at Tsunade. Get it out of my face or I'll break it, the busty blonde warned. Jiraiya quickly pulled his hand away, looking at his finger worryingly. It's the perfect opportunity to get some intel on Konoha. Not only that, but with the proper planning we might even be able to attack and get close to Danzo. We already discussed that, Jiraiya said to Tsunade. Konoha, Suna, Aim, and Iwa are all going to be there. There's no way we could even blow up an outhouse without being slaughtered. It's called sabotage, we're not going to wage all-out war yet. I've got to agree with Jiraiya, Nagato stated, waving the paper around. The odds are way too bad. They're going to be suspicious of everyone, especially outsiders who aren't in Danzo's grip. Besides, the only ones who could qualify are a Jinchuriki, a member of the Inuzuka clan, and a Hyuga. I don't think Ino and Tenten are quite ready for the exams just yet, let alone Naruto, Kiba, or Neji. Another good point, Nagato said, pointing back to Itachi. We're working a way around that, Tsunade replied angrily. We're making disguises which may or may not be ready by the time the exams roll around anyway. What else? Nagato asked, trying not to enrage Tsunade anymore. We want to make a deal with the Kurosuke family, Jiraiya replied. What? Nagato asked with disbelief. What? Konan's voice boomed. The door flew open, revealing the angry blue-haired Kunoichi breathing heavily and eyes wide with rage. Nagato, Itachi, and Jiraiya all leaned away from Konan in fear of what she might do. You want to make a deal with them? If that doesn't work, then we're going to kill them off, Tsunade replied, being the only one in the room who kept their composure. Can I go? Konan asked, calming down just a bit. Who else would we have sent? Tsunade replied with a sly smile crossing her face. Konan chuckled with a certain wickedness that caused Nagato, Itachi, and Jiraiya to lean away even further. We're also sending Shizune and Hana. That's fine with. Wait, Konan blinked once, narrowing her eyes on Tsunade. Why all girls? What type of deal are you trying to make with them? Jiraiya's eyes moved up for a moment to ponder. A disgustingly perverted grin crossed his face as he laughed quietly, lost in his own fantasy. Tsunade delivered a strong, but not too strong, punch to his face, knocking the old man out of his chair. Nothing like that, Tsunade snapped. A spy inside of the Kurosuke family said they're only dealing with Konoha because they're scared. You tell them that we can make them disappear and they can fight against Konoha with us. If that doesn't work, Make a few examples. Make them fear us enough to join. I like the way you think, Conan replied with a sinister tone. Itachi and Nagato looked to one another, then back at Conan, half expecting her to break out in an evil laugh. One last thing, Tsunade began. Some of our scouts in the land of fire. Jiraiya groaned as he lifted himself back up, rubbing his pain-stricken jaw, said that they saw Orochimaru and a team of his students heading east, most likely towards the land of waves. How can we be sure they're going to the land of waves? Itachi asked. Gato of Gato Shipping Industries is there, and most likely he's trying to stop trading between that country and the mainland. Most likely Danzo is sending Orochimaru there to make sure that the former land of whirlpools gets wiped off the map to symbolize his getting rid of all ties to the first Hokage's ways permanently. That, or he's sending him there for the money, Jiraiya muttered. Tsunade shot a look over to her fellow Sannin, then turned back to the others. Either way, we want to send a team to the land of waves. To combat Orochimaru, Nagato questioned. Who in the world would take on that mission? Not to take on Orochimaru, Tsunade replied, but in case that does happen, we're sending you, Itachi, and Obito. Orochimaru has a vast array of ninjutsu, and only the Sharingan or Rinnegan would have a chance of standing against him, that or sending Jiraiya or myself, but that would attract too much attention. Right, cause 3 guys with odd eyes totally doesn't attract attention, Nagato muttered. What are we supposed to do in the land of waves? Head to the ruined remains of the Uzushiogakure, Jiraiya replied. Most likely Danzo has gotten anything of value, but we're thinking of possibly setting up a base there. But why? Nagato asked. We have a feeling Danzo is going to try and create an alliance with the Mizukage, Yugura, Tsunade answered with a grim tone. It makes sense for them. They're both ruthless, and they share similar goals. We want to see what we can do in the land of water to prevent that from happening, maybe get more allies. Our long-term goal is to maybe frame one of the 2 countries from a crime that would prevent any alliances between the 2, Jiraiya added. We don't have to tell you what happens if the land of water joins Danzo's alliance. Nagato, Itachi, and Conan all nodded. Yahiko will be the team leader of the group we're sending to the Chunin exams, Jiraiya began, the rest of you have your assignments. Nagato, Itachi, find Obito and head out immediately. The 2 shinobi nodded then quickly exited the room. Conan, Shizune and Hana are waiting in the medical wing and ready when you are. I'm already gone, sir, Conan replied, rushing out of the room. Jiraiya leaned back and looked to Tsunade, who had her head lowered. This was the first big gamble that they were making against Danzo. Worry, skepticism and doubt filled their minds. All Jiraiya and Tsunade could do now was hope that things would fall to their favor. No, Yahiko exclaimed. No, 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 hell no. I am not babysitting these 3. Kiba, Neji, and Naruto all had their arms crossed with an angry look on their faces. Jiraiya stood between the 3 youths and his former orange-haired student, and sighed with an exhausted look. Look, there's no one else who can take them to the Chunin exams. And this may be our only chance to infiltrate Konoha for any information. I don't care. Find someone else because I'm not dealing with these 3 brats and that's final. Less than an hour later, Yahiko had the same moping look that Naruto, Neji, and Kiba had a moment ago. He stood in the medical wing, currently empty, waiting for Tsunade to apply the disguises to the 3 boys. Alright, Neji, you're first. The rogue Hyuga approached the medical Sannin, who was dipping her fingertips in a jar. Obviously your eyes are a distinct giveaway of your heritage, so I've got a simple solution. We're going to put scars around your eyes, and put a bandana around your head. This way your Byakugan will remain active at all times and nobody will be able to tell. So how do we fake scars exactly? Neji asked. Something we girls like to use called makeup. Tsunade quickly started dabbing her fingers around Neji's eyes. Around 10 minutes later, Tsunade took a huge step back, showing the end result of her work. Neji looked up at the Sannin, then over to his two friends, whose eyes were wide. Dude, it looks like your eyes got messed up badly, Kiba stated with shock. And for the final touches, Tsunade continued, pulling out a black bandana. The Sannin leaned forward and wrapped it around Neji's eyes and tied it behind his head. Now, activate your Byakugan. Yes, ma'am. Neji closed his eyes, then activated his Dujutsu. The veins running to his eyes couldn't be seen under the cloth. As far as anyone could tell, Neji just seemed like a blinded boy. How's it work? I can see everything, Neji replied. What does it look like to you guys? Like you couldn't see a punch coming at you from a mile away, Kiba answered. Sweet, Neji muttered. Now, your story is that you can hear the distinctive sound waves from an opponent's movements to attack and defend yourself, Tsunade began. Your eyes were damaged by an enemy's attack during a routine scouting mission, so you trained your ears to be your eyes. Understood, ma'am, Neji replied before walking next to Naruto. Kiba, you're next. The energetic Inuzuka walked forward and took a seat on the stool in front of the Sannin. The main issues with you are your cheek marks and your eyes. Now, we've developed a special type of cream that should cover your marks, even if you get punched or thrown in water, etc. And for your eyes we have contacts which will disguise the feral look. Without another word, Tsunade started to apply the cream to Kiba's face. While that was happening, Naruto was testing out Neji's eyesight by waving his hands, holding up a certain number of fingers, and even trying to strike him at one point. Despite the distraction of Naruto fooling around, Tsunade managed to apply the makeup perfectly. There we go, Tsunade announced. Neji and Naruto looked over, and their jaws immediately dropped. Kiba's face no longer had his clan marks, and instead of the slit pupils, he had normal, round pupils. Kiba, Neji muttered. Dude, you look normal. Yeah, the young Inuzuka muttered. Don't rub it in, jerks. Naruto, you're next. All I have to do is cover the whisker marks and you should be ready. The blonde Jinchuriki nodded once, then followed Tsunade's fingers with his eyes as they pressed against his cheek. There were countless people working on the large bridge that was meant to connect with the mainland. This was their only hope of breaking free from Gato's control. Even though the business tycoon had thugs that killed and intimidated many, everyone knew the only hope they had was to connect with the mainland immediately. Orochimaru approached the small village that was so eager to break free of Gato's control. It was a perfect example of depression and poverty. A piece of filth for a village in the eyes of the sinister snake. Behind him were his 5 students and an army of thugs Gato hired. They were to simply destroy the bridge and kill the workers, but Orochimaru had other thoughts in mind. Danzo wanted to begin a campaign in the Land of Water. What better way to start than to have a fortress in the one country between it and the Land of Fire? He would tear this village down and build a new one for Danzo's forces, ready to invade to ally themselves with the Mizukage. Normally Orochimaru only looked out for number 1, and there were very few individuals he cared about. The only reason Orochimaru truly cared for Danzo's power or praise wasn't because he cared for the village's strength or he was loyal to Danzo. Orochimaru knew that he was the prime candidate for the title of 4th Hokage, and he would inherit everything that Danzo has already built, thus putting himself on the throne for power. Lord Orochimaru, Kimimaro spoke, shall we commence the attack? Yes, the Sannin spoke with a gleeful pleasure. Burn this village to the ground. Leave nothing standing. Gato's thugs charged forward, screaming like a bloodthirsty mob. Orochimaru's students waited until the thugs had passed before their master spoke again. Try and leave a few villagers alive. We could use some extra slaves to help rebuild our new fortress. Yes, master, the 5 students replied before bolting forward. Orochimaru snickered to himself, then calmly approached the village, hearing the sounds of people's blood-curdling shrieks of terror. Yahiko was sulking down the path to Konoha while the 3 immature brats he was assigned to deal with yapped about mindless subjects. He should be back home planning ways to extract information, or how to build their numbers, but no. He was stuck babysitting during the Chunin exams. Yes, Tsunade and Jiraiya said that this was his opportunity to infiltrate the village and find information, but Yahiko knew that most of his responsibilities would involve taking care of these three. Hey, Yahiko-sensei, Naruto's voice called out. The orange-haired shinobi twitched irritably, growing even more agitated by being called sensei. Shouldn't we have different names? Ya know, aliases or whatever. Yeah, you should, Yahiko muttered. Well, start thinking. Naruto sighed, narrowing his eyes angrily at the older spiky-haired shinobi. Stupid mission that's got me running around babysitting these stupid brats because some stupid busty blonde sent out every other stupid person who could be their sensei, so I'm stuck with this stupid assignment. Hey Neji, doesn't leaving your Byakugan on drain your chakra? Naruto asked. No, I just need chakra to activate it. I don't have to feed my eyes chakra like a normal ninjutsu. But, let's get our names down before Yahiko-sama gets even angrier than he already is. Alright, I think my name should be Ryu. Ryu, Neji repeated. That's a cool name. Yeah, Kiba agreed. Why can't I have that name? I came up with it first, Naruto snapped. Now you two should think of good names. How about Fang? It's simple and easy to remember, Kiba replied. Weak, Neji exclaimed. Kiba shot a glare at his friend. The young Hyuga looked to the sky, trying to think of an appropriate alias. Hazashi. Naruto and Kiba both looked over at their friend, slightly surprised with the choice. Yahiko even glanced back, knowing the meaning behind that name. A slight smirk formed across Neji's face as he looked up to his two best friends who smiled back warmly. Yahiko huffed, then moved his gaze back down the path. Wait, Naruto exclaimed, we need last names. Crap. No we don't, Yahiko replied. We'll just say we're wandering shinobi who freelance in various villages, large and small. Will Konoha believe such a lie? Neji asked. Normally wandering shinobi would have to pay twice the entree fee in any village. The reason is so that some villages wouldn't want to reveal the surnames of some of their shinobi, mainly the ones holding Kekkei Genkai or members from powerful clans, so they just decided to charge more money for those without surnames. Wandering shinobi or mercenaries would still have to pay double amount even if they had proof they hold no allegiances to one village. So why would some wandering shinobi want to join the Chunin exams if they're not a part of any village? Kiba questioned. To increase their profits, Yahiko answered. If villages are looking to hire freelancers or mercenaries, they're going to go for a formal ranking. Young genin, while very rare in the merc business, usually don't get hired for anything more dangerous than cheap manual labor. Chunin get hired for many missions, and can usually grow a reputation from there. Most mercs don't get much higher than Chunin and just rise through the ranks after that. We'll say we're from a mercenary guild. Yahiko held out a piece of paper to his side. Paperwork officially stating that we're a group from the Phoenix Merc Group. Their leader has owed a few debts to Jiraiya, and they're an unofficial part of our group. Why unofficial? Naruto asked. Their leader and Jiraiya are friends, but the leader doesn't want to risk his income by joining up with a group of rebels who hardly have 10,000 followers. Hell, Konoha alone has nearly 20,000 shinobi altogether after the Kyuubi attack. Combine that with the Iwa, Suna, and Aim and they're practically invincible. The only chance we could have is if Kumo and Kiri joined forces. Unfortunately, Kumo is too proud and untrusting of every other country, while Kiri is a ruthless and isolated, so the odds of an alliance are slim to none. Yahiko shook his head and gave a blank stare at nothing. Why am I telling you all this? 'Cause we asked, Neji replied. Yahiko sighed to himself, confused as to why he went into so much detail for these kids. Conan kept an eye on the trees and forest around her. This place was around the area where Itachi came into contact with Konoha. Who knows what kind of surprises they could expect? Do you have a scent yet, Hana-san? Shizune asked. I'm working on it. Conan turned her head and followed her two partners as they moved down the trail. If there were any shinobi watching them, Hana would most likely be able to sniff them out. She was a prime example of the Inuzuka lineage: impeccable senses, strong drive, and independent. Despite this, she was much more level-headed than Kiba or even their late mother. Hana sniffed a bit more intently, raising her nose in the air. I think I got something. The Kunoichi team moved faster as Hana followed the faint scent. Definitely got something. The team went full speed, following Hana through trees and bushes. The young Inuzuka suddenly stopped, with the others freezing behind her. I have a bunch of new scents. I think the Kurosuke family is right up here. Do we have a plan? Shizune asked Konan. Ask them politely to join our group so that they won't have to serve Konoha. And if that doesn't work? Hana questioned. Get ready for a fight, Konan stated before walking forward. The Kunoichi came out of a bush and into the clearing, seeing several men sitting around campfires looking extremely bored. One man nudged his partner, then pointed him towards the approaching Kunoichi. The group stood up and stood in the way of the trio of Kunoichi. What are you doing here? The man asked before the Kunoichi could even stop. The group stopped a few feet away from the Kurosuke gang. We want to talk to your leader, Raiga. The group looked to each other, then back at Konan. Why do you want to see Raiga-sama? We want to talk about an alliance. An alliance to whom? The man asked. His eyes narrowed and his body tensed along with his friends. We know this gang is affiliated with Konoha, Konan snapped. Shizune and Hana looked to the blue-haired Kunoichi. Their faces remained calm, but their hearts raced slightly. We're a group that doesn't want that to happen, so we're going to ask you to join. Keep dreamin', girl, the man snapped, raising his fist. A pair of small blades popped out from his gauntlet. I'd suggest you run along now before Raiga-sama shows up. I'm afraid I'm not going to leave, Konan seethed, her eyes hardening at the Kurosuke thug. Wait, a voice called out. All of the Kurosuke gang stood to their feet, turning to the opposite side of the camp, seeing a towering figure with a hump on his back. Who are you three? Like I said, we're a group that doesn't want you to be with Konoha, so we're going to ask you to join us, or die, Konan repeated. The entire gang started laughing while Raiga slowly walked forward. What group would that be? Raiga questioned. You're obviously not from Kurigakure, otherwise you would just attack on sight. That only leaves Kumogakure, except they tried a few months ago with a team twice your size, and I killed them. So, you must be a rogue group of shinobi who doesn't like Konoha. And judging from the marks on that one's cheeks, Hana placed her fingers against her cheeks, mentally cursing herself. She's from the Inuzuka clan, formerly of Konoha before Danzo-sama ordered their complete eradication, otherwise known as the Inuzuka genocide. So, you three must be out to overthrow Danzo-sama. So, if we keep you alive and hand you over to Konoha, we'd most likely get a reward. Men, deal with these witches and keep at least one of them alive. What did he call us? Shizune asked, her temper rising. Well, Konan began, guess we're doing this my way. Shizune shot forward towards a group of Kurosuke thugs. One wielding a halberd swung for her head. Shizune ducked and flipped her wrist, revealing a scalpel from her overly long sleeves. She quickly sliced across the man's throat, spun around to a man wielding a sword and stabbed into thigh, puncturing one of the man's arteries. Try to keep some of them alive, Hana shouted as she jumped on a man's back, launching herself into the chest of a second man. She rolled onto her feet, then punched a thug who charged her across the face. There's no reason to recruit them if there's nobody to recruit. Konan stepped to her right, knocking a man to the side with her foot. She stepped back to her left, then elbowed a second thug in the gut, causing him to keel over. The third thug who charged was surprisingly quick and sliced Konan right down the middle with a sleek katana. He smirked for a moment until the two halves of the blue-haired woman exploded into hundreds of sheets of paper. What the hell? One of the thugs shouted. What's going on? A few dozen pieces of paper hardened while the rest were used as distractions. The paper flew forward, slicing several gang members in a blinding white whirlwind. The gang members all cried out with fear as they looked about frantically, unsure of what to do. The whirlwind finally stopped. A few pieces of paper swirled up and combined to form Conan's upper body. Well, ready to join. The thugs all trembled, then looked back to Raiga. Impressive, the hooded swordsman admitted. He pulled out 2 swords with spikes coming out. Raiga aimed the tip out at Conan and fired a blast of lightning. Conan flew apart into countless papers once again, creating a smaller but more concentrated whirlwind around the swordsman. Raiga tapped his blades together, sparking lighting to surround his entire body. Lightning strike armor, Raiga exclaimed. Conan's papers continued swirling around while the woman herself thought of a way to get past the armor. What's wrong? Too afraid to attack me? The papers started rotating faster and faster. Raiga smirked until he realized something. The winds were powerful enough to weaken his lightning strike armor. No, it can't be. The papers shot away from Raiga, using the winds that were created to rip Raiga's armor apart. Damn it! Shizune and Hana came from either of Raiga's sides. The swordsman quickly shot up in the air, flipping backwards as he held his swords out. 2 bolts of lightning shot from the sky and struck both swords, covering them both in lightning. Fangs of lightning, Raiga shouted as a powerful lightning bolt came from the sky, shooting down towards Shizune and Hana. The kunoichi gasped briefly as the bolt was about to strike. On impact, the lightning bolt caused a devastating explosion, causing the Kurosuke family to cover their faces from the smoke that shot out. Raiga flipped backwards before landing on the ground. The smoke cleared, revealing a barrier of nothing but paper that shielded Shizune and Hana from the lightning bolt. Raiga's eyes widened with shock, as did the rest of his gang. The paper scattered from the barrier around the kunoichi and assembled back into Conan, clothes slightly tattered and showing a few scratches from the attack. Below, a soft voice told Raiga. The swordsman spun around, slicing a pillar of paper that tried to attack him. The papers reassembled, causing Raiga to continually slice the papers. One of them is charging. Raiga sprung to the side as Shizune attempted to strike him. The swordsman twirled his swords, spun around, then fired a bolt of lightning from his swords. Shizune shot forward as the bolt hit the ground, causing a small explosion. The blast threw Shizune forward, causing her to roll a few times uncontrollably before coming to a stop. Raiga landed on his feet, then snapped his eyes over. Hana was spinning around, using her tunneling fang ability. Raiga raised his lightning strike armor at the last second as the brown-haired kunoichi struck him. On impact, all the lightning went straight towards Hana and exploded due to the force of her attack. The blast sent both combatants flying back. Hana bounced once, flipped head over heels and landed on her feet, while Raiga simply landed and skidded to a stop. "You okay, Renmara?" Raiga asked, shifting his eyes back. "I'm just fine, Raiga-sama," the soft voice replied. Conan moved next to Hana, who was twitching slightly, a side effect from the lightning jutsu. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Hana replied. "A little shaky, but nothing I can't handle." "How do we handle this?" "It's like he has eyes in the back of his head. He dodges any surprise attack and counters any attack he can't avoid. He's a tough opponent, but that doesn't mean he's unbeatable." Hana huffed slightly, but then her eyes snapped open. She sniffed the air a few times, picking up 2 scents from Raiga. The first smelled like death, dirt, and metal, obviously being more dominant than the second scent. "There's 2 people we're fighting," Hana stated. Conan snapped her head over to Hana, examining her shocked expression quizzically. "It's faint and I hardly even noticed it before, but I'm sure that Raiga is giving off 2 different scents. That could be how he's able to dodge our surprise attacks." "Where's the scent coming from?" Conan asked, making sure her voice was low enough so Raiga couldn't hear. "I would assume that the second person is that inhuman hump on his back," Hana replied. "He's not hunched over, so it's not hunchback, and he got his swords from his hips, so it's not a pack for his weapons. It has to be a second person." "Right," Conan replied, breaking herself up into paper. Hana watched, knowing Conan was going to tell Shizune. Hana ran forward, eyes focused solely on Raiga. The swordsman screamed as he slammed his swords into the ground, splitting the ground in half with a powerful blast of lightning. Hana leapt in the air and hurled 3 kunai at Raiga. The swordsman lifted his blades up, slicing the kunai into pieces. Hana spun around, pulling out a chain with a ball way on the end, then hurled it forward. The chain spun around Raiga's hand. Hana then pulled back on the chain, causing Raiga's hand to move forward. The swordsman grunted as he tried to pull back. Hana began spinning around, using her tunneling fang to wrap the chain around her body, pulling Raiga forward. The swordsman screamed as he tried to plant his feet down, but all that caused was him skidding forward. Enough! Raiga shouted. Hana smirked to herself, slowing her tunneling fang down slightly. Raiga! No! Renmara shouted. On the weight of the chain was the symbol often found on paper bombs. All it needed was a surge of chakra. Raiga's sword lit up with lightning, flowing through his arm and into the chain. As it got to the weight, the end of the metal weapon exploded, burning Raiga's cloak, consuming his arm in fire. The swordsman screamed with agony as his cloak slowly flew off, including the pouch on his back holding a small boy. Renmara! Raiga shouted. In a flash, Shizune showed up, taking the boy before he hit the ground and shot towards Hana. No! Idiots! Stop them! The Kurosuke goons all looked to each other skeptically. A few of the gang members ran towards the 3 kunoichi. A wall of paper cut off the gang, circled around and encased the Kurosuke thugs in a bubble. The paper swung around, slamming into a stone wall, bouncing into another stone wall before slamming into the ground and bouncing high into the air. The bubble opened, releasing the goons who hit the ground in an unconscious pile. The paper all reformed to Conan's upper body, glaring at the remaining gang. Stay out of this, got it? The conscious gang members all nodded, whimpering slightly with fear. Raiga grunted as he connected his swords together into a double-bladed sword, holding them both with one hand as his stub of an arm was bleeding. Conan reassembled herself from the feet down, walking forward as she reformed. Give Renmara back, Raiga shouted. Shizune looked to the young boy in her arms. He had short purple hair with big brown eyes. Well, looks like we're bargaining now, Conan stated. No, Raiga boomed. Give him back or I'll kill you all right now. With one hand and without this boy telling you where your enemies are, Hana questioned. Raiga's face twitched slightly with annoyance, confirming Hana's thoughts. I don't think you stand much of a chance. Give him back now. Raiga raised his sword into the air, bringing a powerful bolt of lightning down onto his weapon. Raiga-sama, Renmara muttered quietly. Shizune looked down at the boy, noticing he received a few burns from the explosion. I'm going to heal him, Shizune stated. Think you can handle him on your own? Not a problem, Hana replied. Shizune removed the pouch that held Renmara, revealing that the burns were more extensive than she thought. Plan of action Conan-san, Hana asked. I'll go in for the initial strike, then you finish him off. Getting that sword away from him will cripple him. Hana nodded. Conan exploded outward into a storm of papers. The papers shot forward in a swirling tornado. Raiga fired a bolt of lightning directly into the center. The papers sped up, creating a swirling whirlwind which broke the lightning apart with the powerful wind. Raiga screamed as he slammed his blade into the ground, shooting another bolt of lightning through the ground. The lightning shot up from the ground once it got under the papers. A blinding flash of lightning engulfed all the papers. Conan flew out from the wall of lightning, smoking, clothes torn even more, with cuts and dirt all over her face. Hana managed to sneak up once the wall of lightning faded, socking Raiga in the face as hard as she could for Conan. Raiga stumbled back from the blow as Hana grabbed the hilt of the sword with her feet, then shot herself away from Raiga using her hands. The Inazuka kunoichi skidded to a stop, twirling the double-bladed sword around before snapping them apart. Give those back, Raiga shouted to Hana. You have on chance to join us, Hana snapped. Never. Raiga seethed. Konoha, Danzo, no one can stand against them. I'd be insane to stand against them. Danzo has agreed that he'd keep Kurigakure off my back as long as I do what he says. There's no way that I'm going against him. Fine then, Hana snapped, spinning the swords around her fingers so naturally. Raiga's eyes narrowed in anger that someone could use his swords with such ease. Hana shot forward while Raiga braced himself. Hana jumped into the air and used her tunneling fang, holding the two swords out in front of her. She dove through the ground and tunneled through. Raiga's eyes widened with shock as he started jumping back, trying to get away from wherever she would attack. The ground broke up from behind Raiga. The swordsman screamed as he swung his massive arm back, hitting nothing. Suddenly, Raiga cried out as something tore his back out. Hana's tunneling fang, with the lightning fangs, ripped Raiga in half. The Inuzuka threw her feet out, skidding to a halt as Raiga's two halves fell to the ground. Hana lowered her arms, letting the blood drip from the swords from the deceased Raiga. Renmara's eyes were wide with shock. Shizune blinked with confusion as she looked back. It was luck that her body had covered the gory sight, but the look on Renmara's face was as shocked and tormented as if he witnessed it with his own eyes. Tears rolled down the young boy's face as he started to sob uncontrollably. Shizune's eyes softened at the sight as she continued to heal the burns on the boy's body. Hana walked towards the Kurosuke family, flinging the blood off of the two swords. The gang was in awe, gasping with shock even as Hana stopped in front of them. The Inuzuka Kunoichi pointed the tip of one blade at the gang, bringing their attention to her. Your leader is dead, Hana said coldly. You're no longer required to follow him, nor do Konoha's dirty business. I ask you to please join our group and fight against Danzo's oppression. As long as Danzo rules nearly half of the world, there will never be a moment of peace for any of you. There's a chance Konoha knows who you all are and they'll try to hunt you down to make you work for them again. If you join us, you can disappear and fight against Konoha and bring about a new world of peace. Please help us. Shizune looked up to Hana, then down to Renmara. She certainly has a way with words. Listen, lady, we became a part of this gang so we could get some extra money, one thug stated. We're not revolutionaries and we're certainly not willing to. One young man walked forward, followed by 4 of his friends. The gang looked on in shock before another tall man walked forward. More members stepped forward by the handfuls. Nearly 1/3 of the gang, around 50 or so people, was standing behind Hana. A few members were standing next to Shizune, asking if they could help. Alright, so a few people think they can be revolutionaries, the same man from before snapped. What makes you think you can stand against Konoha? What makes you think your broken gang has a chance without Raiga backing you up? A majority of the remaining gang members looked to each other skeptically. One young man came forward quickly at that part, followed by around 24 more gang members. Now a little over half of the gang was standing with Hana. Whatever, the man muttered. I'm not throwing my life away for some stupid dream, Hana scoffed, then let the rest of the gang walk off. Well, Shizune said as she finished healing Renmara. That was successful. I certainly hope so, Hana muttered. The Inuzuka turned to the nearest Kurosuke soldier. Do you guys have an area where you keep your rations, supplies, and weapons? Yeah, the bearded man replied. We don't have much of anything besides weapons and money. We usually hunt for food and only eat what we need. That's better than nothing, Hana stated. Can we take it all to our base or do we need wagons? We should be able to take it all on our own, the man answered. Alright, let's leave as soon as possible, Hana ordered. The man nodded, then ran off with the rest of the thugs following him. Hana looked over, seeing a few new recruits helping Konan up as she slowly stirred herself awake. The blue-haired Kunoichi looked up, noticing Kurosuke goons running into their camp while Hana, hands on her hips, watched them like a military general. Konan stood to her feet and walked over to the Inuzuka Kunoichi. So what happened? Konan asked, rubbing the back of her head. Raiga is dead, and a great deal of the Kurosuke family has agreed to join our cause, Hana answered. I also got Raiga's swords. The Inuzuka held up the blades in emphasis. Good job, Conan said with a smile. What about the rest of the gang? I'm assuming they're going to try to make it on their own as a gang of thugs. They didn't feel like throwing their lives away for our cause. Conan sighed, then looked out the opposite direction. Should I have forced them to join us? No, if you did we'd be no better than Konoha, Conan replied. You made the right choice by giving these people an option. Thank you, Conan-san. The Kurosuke gang started coming back with rations, money, weapons, and just about everything they could get their hands on. They piled everything into a few small wagons that they offered to pull. After nearly an hour, they were about ready to leave after getting the last of their supplies. Shizune had placed Renmara back into a new pouch that the group found in Raiga's tent, and placed the young boy on her back. You shouldn't have healed me, the boy muttered. I'd rather be dead. Shizune looked over her shoulder at the depressed boy. Without Raiga-sama, I should just be dead. That's not true, Shizune replied. I know it's tough to see it right now, but your entire life is ahead of you, Renmara-kun. You could be so much more without Raiga to influence you. He saved me, he gave me a purpose, and now that he's gone I have no purpose. Shizune smiled and started to walk up to Hana and Conan. You're so young, Renmara-kun. You have your entire life ahead of you. I'm sure you'll find a new purpose without Raiga. You don't know that, the depressed cripple snapped. Shizune stopped next to her partners, Hana watching the last of the supplies being gathered while Conan turned to the medical ninja. We ready to go? Shizune asked. I think so, Hana replied, turning to Shizune. All right boys, Conan shouted. We need to move fast so no one can pick up on us, so don't slow down. Our base is about an hour away, so don't fall behind cause we're not going to slow down for each one of you, got it? Yes ma'am, the gang shouted. Most of the new recruits already feared Conan from encountering her in battle, or one of the many who was bashed around in the paper bubble. Then let's move, Conan said to Hana and Shizune. The three kunoichi ran ahead of the gang, who followed behind as quickly as possible. It was nearly nighttime whenever Conan, Hana, and Shizune returned with the new Kurosuke recruits. There to greet them was Jiraiya as well as a few other rogue shinobi behind him. The Sannin had his arms crossed over his broad chest and a smile on his face at the new recruits. The three kunoichi stopped in front of Jiraiya and bowed before him. I take it that you coming back with all these ninja means that your mission was a success, Jiraiya asked. Yep, Hana replied. Raiga couldn't be convinced, so I took him out. Here are his swords. Hana handed the blades to Jiraiya, who took them carefully. I'd better hide these in a safe place. We'd all be in some serious trouble if Naruto ever found these. The three kunoichi laughed weakly with complete hysteria at the thought of the young Jinchuriki wielding such destructive weapons. You all, Jiraiya snapped, turning to the ninja behind him. Show the new recruits where they can put the supplies and everything else. Yes sir, all right men, follow us. The shinobi behind Jiraiya moved into the underground fortress while the Kurosuke gang followed after them. Jiraiya turned his head to the three kunoichi before he noticed Renmara on Shizune's back. Well, who's the little guy? Jiraiya asked. His name is Renmara, Conan replied. He was with Raiga, and we believe he has a Kekkei Genkai. While he was on Raiga's back, he was able to tell him how to counter all of our moves. Apparently he has some kind of dojutsu like that of the Byakugan or Sharingan. Jiraiya placed his hand to his chin and hummed. I've never heard of a Kekkei Genkai like that, Jiraiya admitted. Perhaps it's some type of mutation. The Sannin removed his hand, then smiled at Renmara, who was staring sadly into empty space. He and Raiga were very close, Shizune explained, noticing Jiraiya's confused expression. Well, I guess I could take him to a room to rest. Conan raised a questioning eyebrow to her former sensei. I doubt he's going to run anywhere anytime soon. Shizune took the pouch carrying Renmara off her back then handed him to Jiraiya. The Sannin slung the boy onto his back then handed the lightning fangs to Konan. You put these away and all three of you get some rest. I'll report your mission to Tsunade. Tsunade will want us to report to her directly, Jiraiya-sensei, Konan stated. And you will, in the morning. Until then, you reported to me and I'll report what we know to her. You all deserve some rest. The kunoichi nodded as Jiraiya turned and walked off. Who else was sent out on missions besides us? Hana asked as she followed Konan and Shizune. Yahiko was sent out with Naruto, Neji, and your bother, Konan stated. But you know that already. Itachi, Nagato, and Obito were sent out to the land of waves to see if there was anywhere we could set up a base at. Hana hummed and nodded once. Other than that, I don't think there was anyone you care about that was shipped out. Hana scrunched her nose and made a face at the back of Konan's head. Itachi-kun can take care of himself, Hana, Shizune said. He's a very skilled shinobi. Hana shifted her eyes to Shizune then back ahead. She was smarter than to let herself get jealous over such stupid things like someone else calling him Itachi-kun. Oh crap, I've got to go check on the medical wing. I totally forgot. I'll see you both later, okay? Shizune quickly ran down one of the halls as Konan and Hana watched her. That girl has way too many things to take care of, Konan sighed. Hana nodded with agreement then continued towards the barracks. Jiraiya walked quietly through the empty halls in the barracks which were made recently. He looked back, seeing the sadness in Renmara's eyes still. Jiraiya turned his head back around with a slight smile on his face. My name is Jiraiya, the Sannin began. Renmara made no sign of acknowledgement or life for that matter. I originally came from Konoha. I'm one of the legendary 3 Sannin. Despite remaining silent, Renmara was impressed to say the least. Jiraiya looked back at the boy then sighed, slightly peeved. I trained Konoha's yellow flash, Minato Namikaze. Renmara simply hummed in response. Jiraiya looked back, giving the boy a slight smile. You're not much of a talker, are you? Again there was no reply. I suppose I can't blame you. I bet you think we're just evil people who killed your master and kidnapped you. Renmara's eyes narrowed slightly, wanting to say something. Sheesh. I hope someone gets you talking sometime soon. Maybe we shouldn't have sent Naruto out on a mission. Naruto is the son of Minato, and is my godson. You talk a lot, Renmara finally said. Jiraiya threw his head back and laughed heartily. Renmara had no response as his eyes lowered back to the ground. Well, here's your room, Jiraiya stated, sliding open a door. Renmara looked in and was surprised to see it was surprisingly larger than expected. It had a normal bed, nightstand, and a desk with a chair. It's vacant, so you got first dips. Jiraiya walked up and pulled Renmara out of his pouch and placed him on the bed, resting the boy's head on the pillow. Renmara felt his face heat up slightly, embarrassed at the attention he was receiving. Jiraiya pulled the blankets up to Renmara's neck and tucked him in snugly. You hungry? I can get you some food before you go to bed. No thank you, Renmara replied. Water? Anything. Renmara shook his head. Jiraiya stood up, and headed towards the door before turning around. Lamp on or off? I don't care. Jiraiya nodded then walked over to the lamp and blew out the light. Good night, Renmara. See you in the morning. The boy stayed silent, staring directly at the darkness. Jiraiya closed the door then headed out for Tsunade's office. In the land of waves, Orochimaru stood in front of a group of village survivors and bridge builders. Gato's thugs were throwing the dead bodies into a pile before setting it on fire. There were 5 other piles of flaming corpses and only 4 groups of survivors that cowered in front of the shinobi. Orochimaru, a voice shouted. The Sannin turned his head, a careless look on his face as he watched the angry, short businessman storming up to him. What the hell? I ordered for you to kill everyone here, not save them. Well, the board members of your company think it would be better if the village's inhabitants were alive. Who the hell cares? I pay them. They listen to me, And so do you, damn it. Suddenly, Orochimaru's hand seized Gato by the throat and lifted the man off his feet. The man's legs kicked around desperately, trying to find solid ground. I work for Danzo, Orochimaru corrected. And he spoke with your board members. They said that they'd be more than willing to hand the company over to the Land of Fire as long as they still get a portion of the profits the company makes. Still, it would be under the direct control of the daimyo. All they need is you out of the way. Son of a bitch. Orochimaru chuckled before tightening his grip, breaking Gato's neck. The Sannin threw the limp carcass to the side, then turned to the survivors. You all are now slaves of Konoha, Orochimaru declared. You will work on building a bridge to the mainland, only so that Konoha may use it. You all will have some time to rebuild your homes while my students and I head back to Konoha. Orochimaru turned to the thugs who were all looking at one another with confusion. You petty criminals, will you work for Konoha? Will we get paid? One thug asked. You'll get to live, Orochimaru stated. The thugs looked to each other, then back at the shinobi, and charged. Orochimaru chuckled coldly. He expected as much. His 5 students all shot past him and into the group of thugs. There were screams of anguish and bloodshed, and less than a minute later, all the thugs were dead. Orochimaru turned back to the citizens with a smile. You all will be able to rebuild as many homes as you can, but a second Konoha squad will be sent in to watch over you. I wouldn't suggest trying to leave this island, by the way. Orochimaru flashed his teeth, then turned around and walked off with his students following behind him. We place the traps at the docks just like you suggested, Lord Orochimaru, Sakin whispered. If they make a run for their boats, it'll be goodbye for them. Orochimaru chuckled, then disappeared into the forest. In the distance, Nagato and Obito were crouched in a pair of nearby bushes, watching the newly founded slaves of Konoha. They looked to each other, then quickly and quietly shot away. Itachi was keeping watch over their small boat while Obito and Nagato went on a scouting trip. They didn't use the docks for the obvious reason that it would alert the island of their presence. Itachi turned, hearing his 2 comrades before they could even land on the ground. Well, good news and bad news, Obito sighed. Orochimaru and his team have left, and Gato and his thugs are dead. Bad news is that apparently Orochimaru wants the bridge to be built so that Konoha can use this island for some reason. Most likely to expand Danzo's reach to the Land of Water, Nagato stated. We can't let that happen. We must do something. We can't do anything, Itachi murmured, slightly angry. If we interfere, we'd reveal our presence to everyone on the island. We should just scout Uzushiogakure like we were told to. So that's it? Obito questioned. We don't even help these people and leave them to die. That's not what we're doing, Nagato said, keeping calm. Itachi's right, the best thing to do right now is complete our mission. We can help the citizens later, but for now we just complete our mission. Obito scowled angrily, then snapped his head back to the village. I know it's hard, but we have to do this, Obito, the spiky-haired Uchiha sighed, then nodded. Nagato turned and jumped into the trees, followed by Itachi, then Obito. Yahiko sat on the ground, staring at the fire between him and his 3 students, who were chatting about trivial things. The entire time, the orange-haired man kept asking himself why he had to be put with these brats. Tsunade and Jiraiya both knew that he never got along with them. Yahiko didn't hate them per se, it's just that he believed that they should work more to help their cause, and not play pranks on everything that breathed. When he was their age, Yahiko already wanted to overthrow Hanzo and his ally Danzo. He sighed and shook his head, trying to focus on what to do in Konoha's Chunin exams. They were only a few hours away from Konoha, but they still needed some rest. As long as they didn't do anything suspicious to draw attention to themselves, Yahiko mainly, then they should be fine. Jiraiya told Yahiko that Naruto's seal was secure, so any chance of the Kyuubi's chakra slipping out was 0. Kiba had been told countless times beforehand to never use his clan's abilities, so hopefully he took those warnings to heart. Neji's eyes were completely covered, and despite that he knew better than to do anything reckless. The big problems were Naruto and Kiba during the exams, and Yahiko outside of the exams. No doubt Danzo would want him under constant watch by Anbu. The man's paranoia and fear was no doubt comparable to Hanzo's. Anyone suspicious would most likely be under watch. He couldn't do anything with Naruto and the others during the exam, even if he was Hokage. Still, Yahiko had to find a way to sneak through surveillance and extract information at the same time. Down below, a voice echoed out. Yahiko and the others looked up, seeing something falling down from the sky. "Look out!" Yahiko shouted, springing himself backwards. The three kids all sprung back as well just as something slammed onto their campsite with tremendous force. Yahiko skidded to a halt, eyes focused on a giant spinning boulder. Naruto, Neji, and Kiba all looked at the spinning object with confusion, shock, and anger. Suddenly, the boulder stopped spinning, then deflated into a young, stout man. Two more young boys, one with a bowl cut, bug eyes, and huge eyebrows, and another with a ponytail, chewing on a toothpick, appeared next to the stout young man. Sorry about that," the one with the toothpick apologized. "Indeed, our sensei was just testing himself," the bushy-browed one stated. "Testing himself how?" Kiba snapped. "I don't think the fat kid is your sensei." "What did you call me?" the stout young man shouted. His two teammates held the spiky-haired boy back from tearing Kiba apart. Yahiko's eyes narrowed at the three students before scanning the area carefully. If there was a sensei, where was he? Suddenly, Yahiko's blue eyes snapped wide open as he ducked and rolled to the side as a man flew past him, landing against the ground like a meteorite. The orange-haired man grunted as he rolled to a stop, facing the smoking crater that was caused by the man who attacked him. Very sharp reflexes, a loud voice boomed. The smoke cleared, revealing a man in a green jumpsuit wearing a typical Jonin vest. He had a bowl cut and bushier eyebrows than the young man behind him. Not many people can dodge Might Guy. Yahiko's eyes widened slightly. Choji, Shikamaru, Lee, front and center. "Yes, Guy Sensei," the three students exclaimed before running and standing at attention in front of their master. "Turn and apologize to this man for ruining his campsite," Guy snapped. The three students turned to Yahiko then bowed their heads. "Our apologies," they said rather loudly. Naruto and Kiba looked to each other with shock then back at Guy. "Hey, Bushy Brow Sensei," Naruto shouted. "It was your fault that our campsite got screwed up, wasn't it?" Guy placed his hand to his chin then hummed before turning back around. "You're absolutely right, young man," Guy called back. He spun to Yahiko then snapped his head down. "My apologies, sir." Guy raised his head then extended his hand. "I'm Might Guy, it's a pleasure to meet you." "And nice to meet you too," Yahiko stammered, shaking the man's hand firmly. "These are my students. Choji Akamichi, Shikamaru Nara, and my prized student, Rock Lee. My name is Yahiko, and those are my accomplices, Ryu, Fang, and Hazashi. We're a small mercenary group." "Ah, mercenaries," Guy repeated, humming as he nodded his head over and over. "Here for the Chunin exams, I assume." "Yes," Yahiko replied with a nod. "Well, it's only a few hours away, you can come with us." Yahiko glanced back at his students, all of them still confused. This could be a golden opportunity, so long as they didn't give themselves away. All right then," Yahiko answered with a nod. He whistled to his students who ran up to him. "We're following Guy and his students to Konoha." "All right," Naruto replied with a careless shrug. "Take the lead," Yahiko offered Guy. "All right, we'll be at the village in a matter of minutes." Let's try to go at a normal pace," Yahiko quickly snapped out. "We've been traveling for quite some time and we're very tired." Very well then. We've been training most of the day, I suppose you three deserve some time off." Guy's students nodded to him. "All right, it's this way, gentlemen. Stick close to me and don't get lost." Of course, Yahiko replied. Guy strode forward with his students following close behind him. Yahiko trailed behind a bit to talk to the other boys. Guys, he whispered quickly. Listen, be careful around these guys. What? Kiba snapped with confusion in his tone. These guys are clowns. Their sensei is the one I'm worried about, Yahiko hissed. That's my guy, Konoha's blood-red beast. The boys tilted their heads to the side with confusion. He didn't get that name for being a clown. He's renowned across the nations because he only uses taijutsu in battle and he's an S-class Jonin, same as Kakashi Hatake. The difference is that guy is ruthless in battle and won't stop until he's beaten his enemy to a bloody pulp with his bare hands, even if the target is dead. His loyalty to the village is second to none, and aside from Kakashi, Guy is Danzo's personal go-to man. What about Orochimaru? Neji inquired. Yahiko sighed. You know what I mean. Yahiko-kun, Guy exclaimed. Come up here with me. I wish to compare our teaching methods if it's alright with you. Of course, one moment please. Guy nodded then turned back forward. Yahiko bent down to his student's ear level. Remember your names, he hissed. Don't screw this up, please. The three nodded, their faces solemn. They watched as he walked up next to Guy. The trio knew if Yahiko said please, especially to them, then it was definitely serious. Guy's students walked back to Yahiko's students. Naruto and Lee observed each other carefully, the former a bit freaked out from Lee's unwavering stare. Kiba and Choji glared at one another, both angry at the other for different reasons. Shikamaru stared at Neji, who pretended he remained oblivious to the stare. So, Naruto finally said, trailing off. I am Rock Lee, the bug-eyed student suddenly shouted. It is a pleasure to meet you. Hi, I'm Ryu. That's Fang, and the blind guy is Hazashi. He's blind, Shikamaru asked, raising his hand up to the bandages around the other boy's eyes. Neji quickly smacked the boy's hand away with a smirk on his face. I may be blind, but my other senses are razor sharp. Naruto rolled his eyes then looked away from his teammate. Now that was cliché. So have you all ever been to Konoha before? Shikamaru asked. Not yet, Kiba answered. Oh, you all will love it. Konoha is full of life and energy the likes of which you've never seen. The three rogues gave blank stares at Lee, confused as to where the boy's energy came from. Who wants to race to the village? Shikamaru-kun, how about you? Guy-sensei said no racing. Shikamaru sighed out. Otherwise I'd love to. Darn, you are right. What to do to pass the time? The rogue trio looked to one another then shrugged, deciding to give up on understanding the bushy-browed boy. The trio of dojutsu users stood on a tree branch, overlooking the long-forgotten remains of Uzushiogakure. They looked at it for several long moments before Nagato jumped forward first. Obito and Itachi both followed after him through the forest and towards the piles of rubble. The years had been unkind to the once proud village. Nothing stood and there were only piles of rubble that had moss growing over them. Random pools of water were scattered around as well, most likely dew from the storms and rain. The rogues examined the area carefully, but nobody saw anything. In the shadows of the rubble, two figures watched the three ninjas closely. We've got guests, one figure whispered. Indeed, let's give them a proper welcome. The duo shot out of the shadows, moving towards the shinobi in the back first. Itachi's head snapped around as he saw something moving from the corner of his eyes. The younger Uchiha sprung straight into the air as the two opponents dressed fully in black, with metal claws attached by a long chain, shot past him. Itachi flipped over and landed in a crouched position, facing the two shinobi who were apparently from Kurigakure. The two turned around, focusing on Itachi. One of them looked over and saw that the other two were gone. What the? He muttered. Where the hell did they? Nagato and Obito shot behind the two attackers, kunai drawn, then embedded the blades deep within the enemy's backs. They both groaned before their eyes rolled up in the back of their heads then limply fell to the ground. Odds are they weren't alone, Itachi stated. There has to be someone else out there. Agreed, Nagato replied, his eyes shifting back and forth. Question is, are they close by or somewhere else in the ruins of the village? I'm right here, a voice called out. The trio turned around, seeing two silhouetted figures standing on a mound of rubble. They used their dojutsu to focus in on their targets, able to make out their features. The tallest one had spiky brown hair and a massive sword on his back and bandages wrapped all around his mouth, wearing a black tank top and arm warmers. The other figure wore an Anbu mask, and had her hair in a bun with two strands tied together that fell down the sides of her face. The tall one jumped up and landed across from the trio, making himself easier to see. He's from Kiri as well, Obito stated, noticing the headband. Your headband says you're from the land of water, and the massive sword on your back means you're one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, Nagato stated. And your eyes tell me that 2 of you are Uchiha, and you possess the Rinnegan, the man shot back. The trio looked to one another briefly and tensed up a bit. The swordsman raised his hand up defensively and took a step back. Relax, I'm not here to fight, even though you did kill my followers, the demon bros. The demon bros, the spiky-haired Uchiha repeated. Then you're Zabuza Momochi. In the flesh, the swordsman replied with a formal bow. The masked man looked up and examined each person carefully. You are Obito Uchiha, since you have the Sharingan and those distinctive orange goggles. You are Itachi Uchiha, the Uchiha clan's most promising prodigy before their unfortunate massacre. And you, Zabuza narrowed his eyes upon Nagato, who tilted his head slightly. You have the Rinnegan. You said that already, Nagato shot back. Rumor in the underworld says that there's a rebellion building up to strike against Danzo's empire. The 3 rebels looked to one another for a moment before turning to Zabuza slowly. What of it? Itachi questioned as he raised his guard. I want in, Zabuza replied. You wa? Obito asked. I have no doubt you've heard of the recent Mizukage assassination attempt. I was in charge of it. My village, my country, my people have been ruled through fear for years now. I know Danzo wants to join with the Mizukage, Yagura. Unfortunately, the little shrimp wants an alliance with the Hokage as well. I don't want Yagura or Danzo's evil to spread throughout the world. When you were a child, you passed your village's academy graduation by killing every other child there, Obito stated. You don't seem like the type of person who values freedom to me. You judge a man because of the area he was raised, Zabuza questioned. I want to help you and you're turning me down. I came to this country, knowing that if your rebellion was worth anything that you'd come to the land of waves to establish a base to keep tabs on Danzo's campaign in the land of water. The land of waves is the first stepping stone to an alliance, and in turn the end of the world for all of us. Alright, Nagato began, so you get to join our rebellion and fight for freedom and justice. That, or you're looking to disappear and were your last hope of doing so. Zabuza's eyes narrowed before he scowled angrily. That's just an added perk, I suppose. I'm still more than willing to fight for your side. I was one of Kirkchiker's best assassins, an expert at the silent killing technique. Tell me that wouldn't be valuable for your side at all. Alright, so you get to disappear and fight with us against your country and village. What do we get? I have secrets about Kurigakure. I know where there are secret outposts, secret caches, supply bases, and so much more. I know how to evade the hunter ninja of Kiri. I know secrets that the land of water wants to hide and forget. Like the absence of one of their Jinchuriki, the 3 rebels' eyes snapped wide open with shock at the last sentence. I myself will no doubt be a valuable asset to your cause. Not only that, Zabuza turned and waved to the other figure that still stood on the pile of rubble. The figure jumped down and landed next to Zabuza, staring at the 3 dojutsu users. This boy, Haku, as a Kekkei Genkei which is long gone and no longer exists in this world. Show them Haku. Yes, Zabuza-sama. Haku made a hand sign with only one hand. Water from a nearby puddle shot up and formed a mirror or ice. Ice jutsus, Obito questioned. The shinobi from the land of snow can use this jutsu. There's one huge difference. Their ice melts, their ice breaks. Not Haku's. Not easily at least. Go ahead and try it. Itachi and Obito nodded to one another, then made the exact same hand signs. The two exhaled 2 waves of fire upon the ice mirror and poured the flames out for nearly 20 seconds. The Uchiha stopped, revealing that the ice mirror hadn't melted in the slightest. Okay. That's impressive, Itachi admitted. Obito shot forward, pulling his arm back as he focused solely on the ice mirror. The spiky-haired Uchiha cried out as he shot his fist into the mirror. A crack was heard on impact, causing Obito to spring backwards, holding his hand and whining in pain. Ow, 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 owie. Very impressive, Itachi added with a smirk. His ice jutsus are very advanced despite his age, Zabuza continued. Haku, show them your ultimate jutsu, but don't harm them. Yes sir. Haku nodded, making a 2-handed seal. Don't move, the boy cautioned. Itachi and Nagato looked around as they were suddenly surrounded by many more ice mirrors. Haku shot forward, being absorbed by his jutsu, and his reflection being shown in every mirror. Shadow clones? Itachi asked, his eyes unable to tell which one was the real Haku. No, Nagato replied. Those are reflections. Haku was it. Yes sir. Can you travel from mirror to mirror? Yes I can. Do you wish for me to show you? Nagato nodded, keeping his eyes peeled. Very well. Nagato and Itachi's eyes snapped to the side quickly, looking at the mirror to their left. Impressive. You were able to track me. Barely, Itachi admitted. I'm sure Nagato-san was able to though, right? Of course, the redhead replied with a smirk. That's a very fast jutsu you have. Very few could be able to tell how fast you move without a dojutsu. Release the jutsu, Zabuza ordered. Haku nodded, then let the mirrors melt around Itachi and Nagato. The masked boy shot out of the mirror and landed next to Zabuza. Do we have a deal? I don't see why Jiraiya or Lady Tsunade would object, Nagato replied. Do you have a hideout or camp already set up in these ruins? There's an old cave that the Uzumaki clan used, Zabuza answered. That's where Haku and I hide out mostly. We've been here for a while, and I'm sure that with enough time and manpower that we could make this entire area a campsite. Nagato nodded with agreement, then turned to Itachi and Obito. Looks like we're heading back home again. The two Uchiha nodded in approval. Nagato turned to Zabuza. Do you have any other allies with you? Zabuza pointed to the dead demon bros. Right. Sorry about that. No skin off my bones, just 2 less mouths to feed. Yeah, you're a chipper guy to be around, Obito murmured. So we're heading back now. Let's go, Nagato barked. The 5 rogue shinobi jumped off into the forest, leaving the ruins of Uzushiogakure behind. Yahiko and Guy's teams had been walking for nearly 4 hours, the former's team severely tired. I thought you said the village wasn't far off, Guy-san, Yahiko sighed out angrily. I said it was a few hours away. You can't tell me you're tired already. We need to ignite the flames of youth within your soul. Oh God, the stories are true. Come on, let's do some running. That'll light the flames of youth within our spirits. Yeah. Choji shouted with fire in his eyes. Yes, Guy-sensei. Onward to the flames of youth, Lee screamed. Guys, Shikamaru said calmly. The village is right up ahead. The 3 energetic Konoha shinobi looked forward, then whined with disappointment. The 4 rogues looked ahead with solemn looks on their faces. Right ahead was Konoha, the hell in which Danzo Shimura ruled. They all gave one another a quick glance before walking forward into the belly of the beast.